It was Halloween night when the rear keypad flashed green and the storm hammered the windows. No one was scheduled. The landline was dead. My cell said, "No service." Then the stairwell door below me opened, and whoever cut the power started climbing toward my floor. These are allegedly true accounts that occurred on or around Halloween. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed. Some sequences are condensed for clarity. Listener discretion advised. I took the weekend overnight because the money mattered more than sleep. It was Halloween weekend. Day shift left a bowl of candy under the monitors and a memo taped to the bezel, "No costumes on duty." The fake cobweb in the lobby breathed when the heater kicked on, a plastic spider riding the draft like it paid rent. The site sat alone in a square of trees, 6 floors, 1 motorgate, fence tight with barbed, that looks decorative until you get close. On a map, it's neat geometry. In person, it creaks like a moored ship when wind comes off the fields. I clocked in at 18:58 because I like numbers that sit straight on a line. The afternoon guard handed me the cloudy clipboard and said the AC on 4 likes to trip when weather sulks. He took 3 steps toward the lot, turned back and added, "Watch the service door in storms, it lies." I asked what lies meant. He rubbed a knuckle and said, "You'll hear it." I put the sentence in my pocket. By 10 the lot was a sheet, floods throwing long white bones across water. First lap, lobby corners firm, 2 star chips still sleeping in the glass, panic bars springing clean. On 2, the vending machine swallowed air like it had learned a new throat. On 3, the janitor closet fan coughed, caught, and settled. 5's stairwell smelled like wet rope and old dust. I logged the small things because small things are the weather inside. The landline clicked twice like it wanted to ring and changed its mind. I lifted to a shaped quiet and put it back. My cell showed a flat bar line and spun a message into a red exclamation mark. From another site, dispatch chatter bled through the radio in scraps, prank pulls, noise complaints, costume in the stairwell, the usual October 31st static that makes real calls sound smaller until they aren't. Around midnight, the building found its rhythm. Wind slid under door sweeps and turned them into reeds. The camera wall went aquarium blue. Hallways looked waxed and patient. The lot turned black plate, rain sketching fine lines across it. Lightning flattened the tree line into ribs, and for 1 white second, something low moved just outside the fence. Next flash, only trunks clean as a diagram. I wrote the maybe down anyway. I don't argue with tomorrow's version of me. At 02:03, the backlot pole camera blinked, juddered, and went grey. Then it gave up to black. From the window, I could see it swinging off its mount, a dark oval against the cloud, wire roots showing when the sky wrote a line of light. I typed wind damage because that's the kind story. I was still typing when the rear keypad chimed. The access software washed a green stripe across the screen. Valid code. Service door. No after-hours schedule. No contractors on the roster. I felt the hair on my forearms lift like they wanted to read it for themselves. Halloween fills the air with excuses. Codes don't. The desk phone was dead when I lifted it. My cell said no service like it was proud of the clarity. I set the chair where I could see the lobby glass and the console with a single turn of my head. Dispatch on a different channel laughed at a vampire trespass and then went quiet. Our room hummed the practiced hum buildings use when they're pretending to sleep. I stepped into the hallway because there's a razor of reception in the stairwell if you stand with your shoulder on the hinge and hold your breath. The air out there felt closer, like putting your ear to someone's chest. I eased the stair door an inch and listened for how the well was breathing. Emergency lights didn't blink. The green test LED on the generator panel stared back like a calm eye. Then the power went out the way a decision goes out. Not a stutter, not a sag. A clean, hard no that you feel in your teeth first and your hands a second later. Darkness pressed. I waited for it to stop moving, but my fingers found cold rail and turned numbers into comfort. 6, 5, 4. On 3, a draft pushed the hair at my wrist toward the door. Breath from deeper in the building. The stairwell carrying news I hadn't earned yet. The sentence from day shift sat up in my head. The service door lies. Somewhere below something opened. The keypad's chime still rang in memory like a small bell I might have imagined. The green stripe felt fresher than the air I was breathing. And the well inhaled once, like it was about to speak. I kept my hand on the rail and let the dark tune my ears. The well tells the truth better than the monitors. At first, I heard testing taps, the kind a careful person makes to measure echo. Then the rhythm settled into heel-toe certainty, the cadence of someone who owns these risers. He wasn't searching, he was arriving. I climbed because height buys choices, 4 to 5, toes first, skirting the treads that squeal. Metal tasted cold through my palm. I eased the 6-door latch enough to feel its weight. On the other side, the floor breathed warm, like a room that knows your name. My holster kissed a bracket and made a bright, stupid note. The shoes below stopped dead. 3 full seconds of nothing. Halloween quiet, like a street waiting for the next knock. Then the sprint, no slap, no panic, just carved speed. I shoved the 6-door hard so it barked the frame and ran straight for the roof ladder. 2 rungs up, chest to steel, breath held shallow enough to ache. The stair door below ripped open. Air shifted around my calves. He took the hallway, not the ladder. The hinge came home heavy, the well sealed again. I dropped and started down, weight on the outside edges of my feet. The trick with stairs is to give them less of you. 5 blurred, then 4. Behind me, the door tore open and that sprint returned, the well turning into a drum you feel in bone. Through the wired glass on 5, a thin white line of light slid across the hall. Hip height, not head. A chest-mounted beam reading door numbers without wasting hands. 3 smelled like wet dust and hot metal generator perfume. That's where you go if you want the building to tell truth to you and lie to everyone else. On 2, he made his first mistake, a half-step skate, a metal clack, a short word more breath than voice. The cadence recovered before the echo did. The lobby door ahead showed as a softer grey rectangle. Panic bars belong to hands that need them. I pushed through into wider air. The fake cobweb in the corner lifted on the draft and stuck to the glass like it believed in me. I keyed the outer lock. The reader took me first try, like the night owed me one small favour. Rain hit the vestibule in nickels. Outside, the lot lay black as a plate with white bones of light under it. My truck chirped small when I thumbed the fob. Shoes hated the angle on the steps and tried to skate. I kept my weight forward and trusted the rail. When I glanced back, he was already translating inside speed to outside speed. Hood up. Coat that kept its shape in weather. A mask that looked party store blank, the kind stacked by the pallet in October. It took the face out of him and left only decision. He ran with arms tight, head still, like he'd measured these pavers when they were dry and filed the numbers where it mattered. I yanked the door. The rubber seal argued, then gave. The cab light made a small yellow room that felt more like a target than a refuge. My knees had that loose, electric feeling you get right before a fall chooses a side. Somewhere on another channel, dispatch laughed at a fake vampire trespass and then went quiet again. Our knight didn't think it was a joke. He cleared the last slab of concrete without losing stride. Distance turned into arithmetic. The motor gate woke in the corner of my eye like a heavy animal deciding on standing. Too slow for what I wanted, exactly the speed it always is. You can't rush that kind of waking. You can only pick which side of the fence you want to be on when it's done. I turned the key and listened for the starter like it was a friend in a crowd. The engine caught, the tires talked. The glass behind him held a reflection of the lobby, a plastic spider still pasted to the frame, riding the draft like it was alive. He didn't change his line. The mask erased expression and left purpose. Rain filled my ears until the world went cotton, but his cadence still cut through, clean as the sound of a stopwatch starting. And then he sprinted straight at me, arms tight, head still, like the building had handed him my distance. A mile out, my phone remembered towers again. I made the call, circled back, and let the cruisers turn the rain into glass. Blue and red folded over the lot. The lobby's fake cobweb quivered in the draft like it had nerves. Radio traffic crackled thick with Halloween, false alarms from fog machines, fireworks called in as shots, suspicious in costume. Even with all that, they took their time on our stairwell. We cleared by the book, announcing angle, corners. The generator room had that warmed, worked smell. Hot wire, old dust, rubber that remembered friction. Panels hummed with their throats shut. Nothing dramatic, just a space that had been considered by the wrong hands. At the rear service door, the frame was more honest than any report. Pry bruises under the keypad housing, precise, not angry. The housing itself sat a breath crooked, the kind of almost right you get when careful fingers reseat fast. An officer ran a light along the lip and didn't say tampered. He didn't have to. Stairwell between 2 and 1. The beam found shape on concrete and stayed there until the edges agreed. He didn't say gun, he said hold, and knelt like a person who still wants both knees later. Tape on the grip. No cereal where numbers like to live. A bead of water balanced on the rear sight like an eye deciding. He bagged it. The stairwell kept breathing like nothing important had lain there. Back at the console, we pulled the window that mattered, and it smiled the way liars do, tidy, quiet, pasted over loud minutes, not blackout, not snow. A mannequin of a hallway standing perfectly still while my knight insisted otherwise. The officer beside me didn't use edited. He let the word live in the air without owning it. The gate head read closed straight through our arrival. I stood 10 feet away and watched chain glitter open like a spine. The housing was warm to the touch, a little animal heartbeat the log wouldn't admit. Hardware lies with confidence if you train it. We kept finding small truths. In the telecom closet, a sliver of clean wood sat under a panel lip where no one who wasn't looking would ever look. The officer teased it free with 2 fingernails and bagged it the way you bag insects, gentle, guilty, certain. Down in the rear corridor hinge, a straightened paperclip rested along the shadow line where the floor never quite dries. Old trick, good trick. That went into a bag too. We walked 6 like it could explain its breath. Latch proud, hinge pins new metal bright, paint dots smug, maintenance innocence. My eyes kept going to the numbers on the doors because earlier I'd watched a hip-mounted light read them like scripture. The hallway looked bored, my chest didn't. The supervisor came in smelling like toothpaste and bad sleep. He asked me to run the access report twice so his eyes could have 2 chances. The stripe on the screen had been clean and green when it mattered. The roster had no name that wanted it. He read from one page and then the other, and the room shrank to what he finally said. So who had the code? An officer, already tired of October, muttered, Halloween, like the night itself could be booked. We kept working the quiet. The cop with the bag said pro the way you say rain. Not a guess, a category. Floating credentials. Borrowed hands, sold numbers. Sentences that taste like coffee. I stood there watching perfect footage pretend to be real and felt my teeth ache from how smooth it was. On 3 by the maintenance corridor, the air near the riser seam felt a half-degree warm where the wall meets its shadow. If you learn heat by cheek instead of meter, you know it. I didn't make it a speech. I wrote the time, the location, and the word slight because reports don't want you to write human unless you have a face. The janitor rolled past with a polite cart whine and glanced at the hinge bag. "I tossed one of those last month," she said, tapping the exact shadow line with a ringed finger. No drama, just memory. I matched her spot to the straight line in my head and felt something inside settle and refuse to relax. We did one more pass in the well because stairs tell the truth if you ask 3 times. On the landing with the bad repair, the tread sang its sharp note, and I heard where a runner would lighten steps to keep time from betraying him. I didn't write that. I kept it where maps live. By 5, the building had put its face back on. The officer signed the last line steady. The supervisor signed like he wanted the ink to fix things. I initialed the boxes that want initials and kept my other hand flat until it remembered steady. Outside, the lot performed rain for cameras that weren't swinging anymore. We stood once more at the service door with its polite plastic. The interface had flashed welcome when it shouldn't. The hardware had believed someone who wasn't me. The officer looked at the supervisor. The supervisor looked at me like maybe I had a better word than the ones we'd used. I didn't. I wrote the last lines that stay small on paper and big in your head. Valid code, no assigned user. Video window replaced. Gate status contradicts observed position, unregistered firearm recovered. The room hummed the practiced hum of a building pretending to sleep through Halloween. When they left, the control room got larger by bodies and smaller by question, not how or when. Those belonged to vendors and clocks. The one that stuck to the glass was simpler. Who did the door believe? And because that answer doesn't live in a report, I asked for the same shift the next weekend. I asked for the next weekend on purpose. Halloween had rolled into the early hours of November, but the bowl of candy under the monitors hadn't moved. The plastic spider still clung to the lobby frame and rode the heater's draft like it lived there. New access codes were issued midweek. The programmer tablet slept in a safe with a form that read like vows. Maintenance dotted screwheads with paint, tiny eyes meant to tattle if anything turned. Dry weather makes buildings honest or better liars. I hadn't decided which. The lot shone like it had been polished, not beaten. First lap, slow, glass corners tight, 2 star chips still quiet, vending on 2 breathing steady. The janitor's fan on 3, giving its little ahem before it settled. 5 still smelling like wet rope, even without rain. I wrote the small things because that's where the big things hide. I set the rear service door feed top left on the wall and let the lobby sit bigger than usual so the spider could be my idiot metronome. Somewhere on another channel, dispatch sifted leftover Halloween, party breakups, prank pulls, witch on a balcony, background noise that teaches you the taste of real. At 0241 the keypad glowed. No chime, just the screen's soft throat clearing, 8 seconds long. I counted with my teeth. The access software recorded nothing. The camera, watching that exact rectangle, behaved perfectly during those 8 seconds, the kind of perfection real hardware doesn't do on purpose, and then went back to breathing like a camera again. I stood before I knew I'd stood. The corridor air shifted a tiny pressure tilt, and the door sweep made 2 soft rasps, like someone striking a match very politely. If you live in buildings long enough, you learn that the air tells the truth, while the screens practice small talk. I didn't open anything. I let the feeling pass through me the way you let a wave finish its sentence. Log first, always. Observed keypad, backlight, no audible chime, no access event, no visible change on camera during observation window, perceived pressure shift at corridor. The word perceived reads weak on paper. It feels heavy at 2 in the morning. Down on 3, the telecom panel wore fresh tape with today's date and a wobbly time. Its bottom corner had lifted a millimeter, as if a fingernail had been curious and then remembered manners. A thin sliver of wood, too clean to be the same one, rested under the panel lip like a tooth a mouth had decided to keep handy. I didn't touch it. It's strange how often you don't touch the thing you most want to prove. Morning brought the knuckle tapper from maintenance. He walked the runs, listening to housings with his hand like a doctor, humming at good metal, shouldn'ting at lazy conduit. We swapped 2 exterior domes, tightened a flex that had dreamed of loosening, slipped armor sleeves where weather liked to flirt. He pointed to the paint dots on screws and said, "If that dot moves, we'll know." I nodded and pictured a blade lifting paint in one clean peel, dot and all, and coming back later like nothing happened. The second dry night behaved until 3:17, when the keypad brightened again, shorter this time, 4 seconds, the breadth of a smaller chest, no chime, no log. The camera stayed a model citizen exactly as long as it needed to, and then remembered it was made of parts. In the closet, the tape corner lifted a hair more. The wood sliver had rotated a quarter turn, neat as a reset. I wrote stage appears reset, and no change to paint dots to keep my feet on the ground. Then I did the palm test along the corridor frames, half an inch off metal, feeling for wrong weather. One vertical seam felt faintly warm where it shouldn't, a heat as thin as a secret. I didn't radio that. I wrote slight and the minute and stared at how small those letters look when they're true. Toward 4, the generator test LED blinked once, without the tiny relay click it likes to make when it thinks about waking. Later, the gatehead's log would show a battery check in that same minute. Little heartbeats scheduled to keep operators friendly, or to mark time for someone else. I can't say which. I can say it felt like a finger tapping a music stand before the note. The last hour folded the way last hours do. I kept the stairwell half in view, so I'd see it breathe, and it didn't. The spider rode its fake web and pretended to read the room. The building made the practiced hum buildings make when they're deciding what to keep for themselves. At 9, the supervisor held my incident up to the light like the paper could confess. "Camera perfect during the exact seconds," he said, not liking the taste of those words. He didn't say glitch, he didn't say edited. He wrote nothing that would start an argument he couldn't finish, and I respected that restraint even while it made my teeth grind. I stood in the rear corridor an extra minute on the way out, looking too closely at plastic. In daylight, everything looks innocent. The keypad face gave back my own shape, small and distorted. The paint dots on the screws looked smug. The fence outside thrummed in a clean wind and turned itself into a low instrument. Back at the wall, I replayed what I didn't have. 8 seconds of perfect honesty that never existed. No shimmer, no compression ghosts in the corners, just a hallway doing nothing with unusual excellence. It's the excellence that hurts. Mess makes sense. Mannequins don't. I signed out. The doorknob felt cool and honest in my hand. The lot smelled like wet concrete trying to forget a storm. In the corner of my eye, the tape corner in the closet kept lifting a millimeter every time I blinked. I told myself the next week would come with answers. And sometime after that it did come with questions in a badge wallet and a contractor's tool bag. The Monday after Halloween, the weekday detective called while the building wore its daytime face. He didn't want adjectives, he wanted measurements. Steps from lobby door to first landing if you're not thinking. 13 if you're lazy, 12 if you're late. Where'd you make noise? The holster kissed the bracket on 5. How long did he pause? 3 seconds that leaned forward. He walked the site like a man who respects corners. No hurry, palms behind his back so his hands couldn't volunteer. He had me open 6 the same way, climb 2 rungs on the roof ladder, hold my breath while he stood on the landing below and listened to my silence. On the tread that sings sharp from an old repair, he smiled without teeth, recognition, not comfort. We stood in the maintenance corridor and looked at the telecom panel wearing fresh tape like a bandage. The bottom corner had lifted a millimeter. A clean sliver of wood waited under the lip. He fogged the steel with a breath and watched the haze pull toward the seam. "Warm here," he said, "like a throat." At the console he asked me to draw the night, not just talk it. I traced the cadence, testing steps, my holster note, his 3 count, the cut onto 6, hip-mounted light-reading door numbers, the half-slip and metal clack on 2, the lobby sprint. His pen kept up with me. Only then did he say it. Familiar. Not a guess, category. Stare cadence from people who live in wells, engineers, fire, thieves who like opening things. Hip mount keeps both hands free. He asked about the glow. 8 seconds one night, 4 on another. No chime, no log, camera perfect exactly then. He wrote no chime twice and said, "Storms make messes. Halloween makes noise. Neither makes a polite light." The alarm contractor came with a rattling bag and the smile of a man who loves puzzles more than sides. He opened the keypad and showed the reed switch. Tiny glass, either sleeping or singing. "Binary," he said. "A loose magnet gives chatter. It doesn't decide to glow elegantly." He traced cable with 2 fingers like a guitar string. If you tickle power just to wake the screen, the controller still coughs somewhere. It keeps a count even when somebody tidies the story. He scrolled the controller's event counts, not just events. The number ticked where the pretty interface stayed pure. "Telling after doing," he said, pleased with the phrase. "If you were pasting 8 seconds of nothing, you'd make it perfect." Real cameras breathe at the edges. A mannequin doesn't. We tested that. Honest footage from earlier, tiny compression ghosts swimming in corners, a shimmer when the AC turned. In our window, museum stillness. No swim, no breath. The contractor held a finger in the air as if waiting for music that never came, and nodded like a craftsman who recognizes craft he'd rather not compliment. At the rear corridor hinge, he tapped once and said, "Paperclip under the pin." Old trick. Good trick. Bottom carries weight, top looks loyal. He set fresh paint eyes on the pins, the kind of dots that tattle if anyone gets careless. The gate head was cool that day, warm the night it lied. The log showed a battery check in the same minute the keypad had glowed. "Sweet little heartbeat to keep operators friendly," the contractor said. "Or to mark time for someone else." The detective stood in the maintenance doorway and watched the tape corner lift another breath. "If I ask you to open it, do you want to?" "No." "Good," he said. "Don't." He walked me back through the night, from the body outward. What I smelled first, hot dust, heard first, the chime, felt first, pressure on wrist hair when the stairwell breathed. He underlined pressure twice. That's the only one they can't paste over. We took prints and got what careful hands leave, nothing anyone can use. Tape on the gun grip did its job. The keypad face wore a polite smear without ridges. The wood sliver kept secrets like wood does. Policy arrived on paper like a bill slid under a door. More paint dots, tighter timeouts, 2-factor on the console, the programmer locked like a pet. All good, all polite. None of it changed the memory of a screen that learned to glow without a chime. Before he left, the detective said, "If it happens again, don't chase it. Count seconds, feel the air, call me after." The contractor texted an office line with a smiley he probably didn't mean to send, and added, "Mannequins don't breathe. Watch for breath." That night I stood in the maintenance corridor where the seam warms and the tape corner dreams. The spider in the lobby still rode its fake web like it owned the frame. Somewhere across town, post-Halloween chatter fizzled into ordinary. In our hall, the sweep made two soft rasps, and at the console, the keypad's face brightened my name on a wall I couldn't see. I didn't move. I did what I'd been told. Let seconds become numbers. Let the building's throat tell me which way it pulled. Listen for the choice a practiced person makes after a light that doesn't chime. I counted to 8 with my teeth. And in the 9th second, something deeper than electricity shifted, like a person changing pockets before they run. I held at 8 and let the 9th second pass through me. Something in the building shifted that wasn't electricity, like a person changing pockets before they run. The keypad's face eased back to dark. No chime. The software stayed innocent. The air kept its new angle a heartbeat longer, then went level like a table someone had just straightened. I didn't chase. I wrote the second down to the digit and stood where the corridor could teach me. The sweep gave me the too soft rasp answer, the hinge did not. From another channel, a last echo of Halloween stumbled by. Leftover fireworks called in as shots, a cape on a balcony that turned into a tarp, and then the radio settled into weekday breath. At the wall, the camera behaved too well during our window. I pulled a clip from earlier and watched honest footage breathe, tiny compression ghosts in the corners, a shimmer when the mechanical coughed. In my 8 seconds, the hallway was a mannequin. No swim, no edge breath, just excellence. The contractor's sentence sat on my shoulder. Mannequins don't breathe. I checked the controller's event counts. Something had ticked where the pretty log said nothing, telling after doing. The phrase looked pleased with itself, even in my head. I didn't like that. The elevator answered next with a children's pattern, G243 uncalled. When the car opened in the lobby, the doors stopped a breath shy of fully apart, the way they do when a shoulder was near them recently. The kick plate wore a fresh grey wipe at knee height. I cleaned it, because I always do, and filed the fact that I would be cleaning it again. I walked the rear corridor and put my palm a half-inch from the frame seams. One vertical stripe gave back a faint warmth, thin as a secret, true as a burn you can't photograph. I stopped myself from writing human. I wrote slight, the minute, the place. The gatehead's log picked that same minute to record a battery check, a friendly lie for people who are tired. The housing itself was cool as a countertop. Out in the lot, the puddles had stopped pretending to be mirrors and started pretending to be nothing. The maintenance closet wore its tape like a bandage. I crouched and looked without touching. The bottom corner lifted another millimeter while I watched, as if the panel had a dream and was trying to turn over. The sliver of wood under the lip sat neat and new. I pressed my cheek near the metal without making contact and heard cloth speak to concrete, a careful redistribution of weight, like someone choosing angles rather than speed. I let the sound end by itself. Then I did the only thing I could do that didn't break rules. I sharpened a pencil and made a dot at the tape corner, small as a freckle, so if it moved, I'd know it wasn't my memory being loyal to itself. Back at the desk, I tried to live with the mannequin clip by playing it with the sound up, which is its own joke. The DVR has no sound. I played it anyway. It still didn't breathe. Mo 307, the keypad brightened for 4 seconds, shorter breath, same manners. Again, no chime. Again, no event. My pencil dot stayed where I put it. The tape itself lifted a whisper more at the corner. In the well, a stair tread sang the sharp note from that bad repair, 1 floor below where I stood. Not a wait, the note you make when you're slowing down so time won't tell on you. I put my ear to the stair door and let the building own my hearing. Far below, metal clicked the way small tools do when they have a trick to perform and don't want applause. The pressure in the well changed by a finger's width. I could have moved. I didn't. The detective had asked for numbers, not heroics. Woe 319, the elevator cycled its pattern, and then the freight gave me a single honest thunk, the sound of someone who doesn't know the favor the right trick, but gets what they want anyway. By the time I reached the cage, the gate was down, the control head polite, the metal warm as breath where a hand had ridden it. I wrote no fault because the screen asked me to. Truth feels small when you give it to a box. I found the janitor in the corridor wiping a crescent under the rear hinge with a towel. "Keeps getting wet right here," she said. Simple fact, no story. I asked her to leave it this time. She said okay and then looked at me like she wanted to give me something kinder than that and didn't have it in stock. I stood under the lobby spider to measure my patience. The plastic had gathered a dust line along one leg where air always leans. Out on the street, someone stepped through a puddle one time and kept their water. A door across the way took a breath and settled. A city makes its own choir if you let it. 0341. The keypad brightened for 2 seconds, smaller chest again, and the generator test LED blinked once without its usual relay click. My pencil dot didn't move. The tape did, enough to make the dot look like it had. I could live with that. I prefer lies that work to truths that don't. I called the detective after the second glow like he asked. Quiet ring, tired hello. I gave him the seconds, the count mismatch, the mannequin clip, the warm seam, the freight thunk, the hinge crescent, the pencil dot that stayed loyal while the tape didn't. He grunted once for the count, twice for the heat. "Don't open," he said, tone flat the way you talk to a person standing at a balcony rail. "Note a third if you get it. Don't chase." I asked about the word inside. He didn't say it. He said practice, which is the same word with a badge on it. The last hour tried to be ordinary and failed in a quiet way. On 6, the hinge echoed dull, which means the hallway beyond was shut. On 4, the bad tread didn't sing when I expected it to, which means weight had taken it differently earlier, and my ear was still ringing with that choice. On 2, someone had turned the little lobby pumpkin decal toward the wall, like the night had ended and wanted to face away from me. I built a list for the morning, not a report, a list with verbs, mark, tape, photograph, paint dots, measure, gatehead temp, clean, kick plate, again, log, event counts, not just events. Verbs keep you from telling yourself poems. Stow 412. The keypad stayed dark. The stairwell breathed like a person who has decided to sleep on their side. I walked the long way back to the control room so I could listen to 3 doors fail to inhale when I passed. It's a comfort to hear a thing not happen. At 9, the supervisor read my night like it was going to tell him something kinder than it had told me. He didn't like mannequin as a word, but he liked the test. He underlined counts, mismatch, and didn't smile at battery check. When I showed him the pencil dot, he said, "Don't add marks," which is fair. And then he looked at the slight lift like he was trying not to ask a question with his eyebrows. Outside, the fake cobweb came down and the bowl of candy went home in a tote. The air lost its October taste and kept its weather. Inside, the paint dots on the keypad screws looked like patient eyes. The sliver of wood in the closet stayed where a careful hand would want it. The building hummed a practiced hum. I signed my name in the box that wants names and left my ears behind by accident. That night, at home, the The refrigerator's compressor came on and my body wanted to count. I let it count to 8, and then I told it no. The city slept like it knows how. I closed my eyes and saw the tape corner lift a millimeter and a finger I couldn't see tapping the music stand once before the note. The next weekend I'd stand in front of the panel instead of beside it, and the closet would answer with cloth on concrete, so close it felt like a whisper through my teeth. The next weekend I came in early and stood in the maintenance corridor until my ears stopped wanting to be helpful and started telling the truth. Halloween was over on paper, the plastic spider was gone, the candy bowl empty, the lobby corner bare. The building still wore a little October in its air, the kind that makes quiet feel rehearsed. Maintenance had retaped the telecom panel with a fresh strip and neater handwriting. The paint dots on the keypad screws looked smug and new. I didn't bring a pencil this time. The supervisor had asked me not to add marks. I brought patience instead. Patience is a tool that doesn't set off audits. I let the hallway settle and put my cheek near the panel without touching. Metal holds temperature the way a person holds a thought. Behind the seam, something shifted its weight the careful way. Cloth on concrete, knee over shin, shoe rubber against a rung no one sees. A breath of warm dust came through the smallest gap and gave my tongue the taste of old insulation. I didn't open it. I said nothing on the radio. I let the building finish the sentence. 2 floors down the stairwell sang the sharp tread note from the bad repair. Not weight, timing, like someone choosing which step to spare from telling on them. I stepped back from the panel and watched the new tape corner, not lifting yet, but thinking about it. If you work nights long enough, you learn to read tape like weather. Logs stayed neat. The pretty interface said we were alone. The controller's count said otherwise by 1, then by 2, the way a clock gets ahead of itself in small, proud ways. I wrote the numbers without commentary. Numbers don't like adjectives. I took a slow exterior walk to give the inside a chance to make its next choice. At the loading dock roll-up, there was a clean toe scuff, high on the slat, exactly where you'd plant to jump and catch the lip, and a palm-sized clean patch on the dusty sill, as if a hand had been there and boredom had cleared around it. The motor housing felt like nothing. The concrete held a thin crescent of damp where a shoe had pushed off and left its arc on the film of grit. Small truths keep their own scale. Back inside, the freight elevator gate was down and polite. The control head said ready. The metal at hip level held a stripe of warm the width of a hand that had ridden it. I logged no fault because the head wanted that, then wrote surface warm for me. At 01:58, the keypad brightened 4 seconds. Short breath, no chime, no event. The camera held its mannequin stillness through the window and then remembered how to breathe. The corridor air leaned and the door sweep gave me those 2 soft match strikes. I didn't chase. The detective had asked me to count, not perform. At 02:07, the tape corner on the panel lifted a millimeter while I watched. Not a trick of eyes. The glue let go the way skin does when it knows the future of a bandage. I put my ear to the seam again. A zipper tooth whispered somewhere inside the wall and then decided against itself. Silence is loud when it arrives with intent. Dispatch floated leftover Halloween on another channel, an apartment fog machine tripping a smoke sensor, a party whose bass got promoted to disturbance, and then drifted quiet. Our stairwell exhaled like a person deciding to stand up. I set my back to the cinder block and counted seconds with my teeth because numbers keep you from doing the wrong brave thing. 02:13, the elevator ran its child's pattern, G243, and stopped at 3, with the doors holding a breath-short gap like someone had passed too close. I stayed with the panel. If someone was inside the riser, passing floors, They'd choose their pauses where cameras are kind. You learn the map whether you want to or not. The detective answered on the second ring, voice like a coat he hadn't taken off yet. I gave him the count mismatch, the mannequin window, the toe scuff, the warm stripe, the tape corner, the zipper that changed its mind. "Hold position," he said. "Do not open. If you get steps to lobby, announce and let them have the door." His tone had the balcony rail in it again. I trusted that. At 02:21 the corridor changed pressure a hair, and the stairwell door on 6 gave a low, private sound, the noise hinges make when someone thinks they've learned how to move without sound. I pictured the hip light scanning numbers, the free hands, the chest that likes to run. I pictured the way he paused after my holster rang the bracket, the 3 seconds that leaned. I gave the stairwell my best silence and let it answer. Steps came to the landing above the maintenance corridor and paused the way a person pauses when they listen to a room like a radio. My throat tried to clear itself, and I told it no. The panel seam breathed a half-degree warmer. On the far end of the hall, a paper sign on a corkboard fluttered twice and then stopped, air moving in ways you only notice if you've lived here long enough to be bored by everything else. 2 floors down, the sharp tread note sang again, late by a count this time, as if he'd changed his mind mid-step. People who practice change their mind inside a motion, not before it. That's how you know the practice is good. So 2:29, the keypad stayed dark. The DVR gave me honesty for once, full of tiny edge ghosts and little bitrate arguments in the corners that made me feel better about cameras as a species. The controller count didn't change, and that somehow sat worse than if it had. I took 1 step toward the panel. Inside, cloth touched concrete in a way that wasn't moving so much as redistributing. If you've ever waited behind a door while someone waits on the other side, you know how a building can hold 2 people without either having to breathe too loud. I didn't touch the tape, I didn't touch the wood, I didn't touch the knob on the truth. 2:33, the front glass downstairs breathed. A draft ran up the stair throat and turned the corridor air 1 degree colder along my wrists. Running steps crossed tile, changed to concrete, then went to wet, and then to nothing in the way streets do when they decide they're done helping. I moved then, not fast, not slow, just debt collector pace. By the time I hit the lobby, the door had settled back onto its frame with the satisfaction of a thing that did what it wanted. The lot looked freshly innocent. The gate head read "closed" like a polite lie. The spider was gone, but the little tape rectangle where it had hung still showed on the frame, a square of cleaner behind a thing that left. The camera gave me honesty again, which hurt worse. Back up the hall, the tape on the riser panel had lifted enough to make a small triangle. The sliver of wood under the lip had rotated another quarter turn, neat and thoughtful. I took a long breath I hadn't earned and let it all sit in me without shape. I didn't open it. That was the point. I held the position the detective wanted and wrote the minute, the color, the smell, the slight. I wrote possible movement inside riser because that's the word that lives between what I could swear and what I could prove. Then I stood still long enough to hear the building decide whether it had more to say tonight. It didn't. It went back to humming its practiced hum, a little higher, like a mouth that's just swallowed a lie and is waiting to see if anyone tasted it. And in the morning, policies would find new sentences, but the question would wait in the hinge, not how or when, but who did the door believe? Morning put paperwork where the night had been. Risk sent a template with boxes that wanted short answers to long questions. Maintenance promised weld tabs on the riser panel and tamper seals that break loud. IT moved the recorder into a locked rack with a camera watching the camera. Access control reissued codes, audited who had ever touched the programmer, and put the phrase least privilege in an email like a prayer. The detective called once more. The gun gave back nothing. Tape did its job. Metal kept its own counsel. The keypad's controller showed the same stubborn mismatch. The count ticked where the pretty log stayed clean. He said they were looking at a handful of similar entries in the county and then said nothing for a while, the kind of silence that means the shape of the thing is bigger than your building. "If your tape pops," he said, "don't be the one who opens it." By Tuesday, the fake cobweb and the bowl were gone. The lobby corner had a clean square where the tape had kept dust honest. The spider left a faint circle of stick on the frame that the buffer couldn't bully out. Halloween was over on calendars. It stayed in small ways, a peeled pumpkin decal forgotten on the freight door, a bat-shaped pushpin still holding a sign on the corkboard. They added drills. 2-man checks on stairwells. Longer delays on the motor gate so it can't be asked to pretend while it's moving. More paint dots on screws, small eyes everywhere. I learned to hate the dots less. They're silly until they aren't. The next weekend I took the same shift because I didn't want my ears to forget the song and learn a worse one. Dry weather. Honest wind. I walked past the telecom panel with its new welded tabs and bright brittle seals. The tape corner couldn't lift now. Metal had decided to be metal again. I shouldn't have missed the old lie, but I did, the way you miss a warning once you've learned to trust it. At 02:12, the keypad didn't glow. It stayed dark and proper. The controller count stayed exactly where the pretty log said it should. The camera breathed like a living thing, edges swimming their tiny, ugly swim. I should have felt relief. Instead, I felt the hollow you get when someone practiced, moves to a new room, and you still find yourself listening to the one they left. I took the long stair loop. On 4, the bad tread didn't sing. Whoever had learned to lighten that step had taken their song with them. On 6, the hinge echoed bright, not dull. The hallway beyond was open. My body relaxed at the sound before my head agreed. If you work nights, your body makes decisions for you and hands you the bill later. The janitor met me at 3 with fresh sleeves of trash liners and the look people wear when they won't say "I told you so." She touched the lower hinge with a ring and said, "Dry." Then she laughed once, relieved, not happy, and pushed on. Close to 3, wind carried rain into the edge of the stair window and made a watercolor of the lights outside. The building inhaled and exhaled like it had rehearsed the motion. My wrist hair didn't lift, my teeth didn't taste electricity. I stood where the panel used to be easy and listened to the new quiet rub along the old story. At dawn, the supervisor did the new ritual, checked dots, checked seals, checked gate logs, at the perfect 8 seconds that no longer exist, and nodded like a man who has convinced himself of cause and effect. He told me there's a bigger policy coming, vendor lockdowns, contractor escorts, badge audits that will make a person feel watched by their own lanyard. He said it with the tired kindness of someone who knows policy fixes paper and hopes it fixes air. I drove home in a light rain, and every green light on the way felt like a joke with a good setup and no punchline. In my apartment, the refrigerator clicked on and my body tried to count to 8. I told it not tonight. It stopped at 3 and waited. 2 weeks later, after weather and normal and a schedule change that put me on days for a bit, I covered one more overnight. Not Halloween, just dark. The keypad stayed a citizen, the camera stayed human, the riser wore its ugly welds. Sometime around 02:40, standing in the stairwell with nothing to blame, I heard 3 silent beats, then the sound of someone committing to a sprint, but only in memory, the way a song gets stuck in your head without the radio's help. That's what stayed, the cadence, the 3 count after my holster kissed the bracket, the hip light scanning numbers, the door on 6, breathing when he passed without touching the latch, the glow without chime, The camera that chose to be perfect only when it mattered most. The little wooden tooth under a panel that wanted to help. The paperclip that made a heavy door polite. The gate that read closed while chain glittered open like a spine. The practice that made a building feel like a partner to someone else. What left was proof. Proof moves fast in places where people rehearse. The rest sits with you and waits for rain. If you want the real last line, it's small. The service door doesn't lie to everyone, just to me. And when the weather turns and the stair window starts to sing, I still hear that hallway learn to run. 3 silent beats, then a sprint I can't catch up to, and a keypad that flashes welcome for someone I'll never see. I liked nights because they shrink the world to what your lights can hold. It was the week of Halloween, which makes empty buildings noisier in small ways. Someone had taped a paper pumpkin to the elevator panel and stuck a bat pushpin in the lobby bulletin board. A plastic cauldron of candy sat by the console with the good pieces already gone, which means day shift had first pick. I did my first lap the way I always do. Loading dock seated, freight gate latched, stair doors springing clean. The lower garage camera angles came last, because that feed tells you who you are before you're ready. The wall of monitors had the aquarium blue they get when offices forget you. Upper floors looked posed. The lower level held its light like a swallowed secret. Puddles that weren't puddles, pillars that lined up like ribs. I logged 2 late leavers and watched their taillights climb the ramp. Radio traffic from other sites was pure October, false smoke from fog machines, noise complaints, witch hat in the stairwell, laughter that turned into policy and then back into laughter. At Azure 11 a shape slid into the lower garage frame near the pillar with the old paint scrape. Long coat that hung like it remembered rain, even though the concrete was dry. He didn't hurry, he drifted in a line just inside the cone of the camera, head tilted the way people tilt when they're listening to a building instead of looking at it. The gate hadn't moved, no 24-hour badge had pinged. The access log kept pretending to be a calendar. I called it in, wrote it clean, and got the usual, observe, do not engage. I tried to be the version of myself who listens. I lasted 2 minutes before my body decided it worked here more than the order did. The elevator ride down stretched. Metal makes different promises at night. When the doors opened, the garage air pressed my ears like a parent. Echo came back with a swimmer's drag. Nothing moved except a drip, counting seconds near the drain, and my breath trying not to be a metronome. I checked between bumpers and columns and tires. I checked the low slots where people wedge themselves when they want to vanish. I stood where the camera had seen him and let the concrete talk through my shoes. The pillar had a line of dust that wasn't quite a line anymore, like a coat had brushed it softly and been careful not to care. No footprints, no scuffs, no reason to keep being here except that I was. Back at the console, he was right there again the second I sat down. Same pillar, same tilt, same measured distance from the painted stall number like he'd pasted earlier when I was looking somewhere else. Either I'd looked wrong, or he had a way of living inside the part of the frame that cameras prefer. My stomach did the small drop bodies do before minds admit. He began to wander toward the stairwell door that leads into the core of the building. Not centerline like civilians. He kept to the column seam where the lens thins. Twice he turned a shoulder toward the glass, as if he knew exactly where the blind edge lived. At the frame, he slid out of sight like steam through a vent. The next camera in the chain pretended not to know him. I pulled up a grid, garage, lobby, elevator bays, core halls, because wide helps even when it doesn't. Everything on top looked like a brochure. Then the lobby elevator dinged without a call. When the doors eased open, the car was stainless and empty, the kind of honest that makes you dislike honesty. On the stone just outside, a dark, wet oblong appeared, and then another and another, stepping away in a line you don't have to be a guard to read. They weren't shoe prints, they were bare. 5 toes right, 5 left, arches real, heels with personality. Edges were crisp for the first few, softening as the water thinned, like the story wanted to be reasonable and then remembered it didn't have to be. The trail turned toward the corridor I patrol 3 times a night, and chose the side with the camera blind seam, as if it had walked with me before. I told dispatch what I could say without making myself sound like I needed October more than it needed me. The radio answered with another sight, laughing about a skeleton in a window that wasn't a person. Then it went quiet, and our lobby stopped feeling like a joke. I took the other elevator up because height buys choices. 5 opened into a hallway that always looks too clean, like it wants to be believed. Halfway down, a door I lock every night sat 2 inches open. I let my light be a fingertip and pushed. A small office breathed stale coffee and printer dust. On the desk, a notepad with a square drawn over and over until the middle went dark, the kind of doodle you don't notice you're making when a thought doesn't want out. Behind me, somewhere further down, air moved in a way doors make when they can't help telling you they're not alone. I turned off the light to hear better because sometimes seeing gets in the way of listening. The carpet told me nothing. The building took a small breath that didn't belong to mechanical. Down on the lobby monitor, the wet steps kept drying into the stone in a way polish can't lie out later. My chair creaked in the empty control room, a sound I don't remember it ever making before, and I realized I'd left it turned in a position I never turn it. Small truths lined up with small mistakes. And somewhere between the garage and the corridor, a door I lock every night had chosen to stop pretending. I backed out of the small office and let the door sit on the latch, the way a guilty thing does. The carpet held my weight like it knew me. The building took one of those small breaths mechanical can't fake. I kept the light off because sometimes seeing talks too loud. Down on the monitor wall, the lower garage feed flickered one compression sigh, and then there he was again, same pillar, same tilt, same measured distance from the painted stall number like he'd paced it once and saved the answer. I'd just been there. Either I look in the wrong places or he lives in the part of the frame that prefers cameras. He drifted toward the stairwell, not down the center line like civilians. He kept to the column seam where the cone thins. Twice he turned a shoulder to the lens like a man checking a mirror, and then he slipped past the edge the camera can't keep. The next feed in the chain pretended it had never heard of him. The lobby elevator dinged without a call. When the doors eased, the car was stainless and empty, honesty that makes you feel lied to. On the stone just outside, the first wet oval appeared, then another. Bare. 5 toes neat as stamps, arches present, heels with personality. The edges were so sharp for the first few that I had the stupid thought a printer had done them. They softened as they walked away across the shine. The trail chose the corridor I patrol 3 times a night, hugging the blind seam like it had walked with me before. Halloween lives in the corners of things. A paper pumpkin peeled half off the elevator panel, rode the door gap when it closed, a fun-size wrapper stuck to one wet print and sailed an inch before deciding the floor was good enough. From another site, the radio said, "It's just a cape on a balcony." And then someone's laugh fell into policy. I took the other elevator up because height buys choices and time. The car smelled faintly of the candy bowl by the console, peanut and something fruit you only like in October. On 5, the hallway woke in sections, motion strips blooming ahead of me. Halfway down, the door I lock every night still sat 2 inches open like it had decided not to lie for me anymore. I nudged it with the beam as a fingertip. Printer dust, a stale coffee ring, that notepad with a square drawn to darkness, a tunnel that someone's hand had made out of waiting. My radio clicked once with an open mic from a stranger's channel, a stray breath that didn't belong to either of us. I stepped back into the hall and heard the wet step I'd been trying not to imagine, off my rhythm by a shade, heavier on one foot, the way you get when skin meets tile. I put the light down the corridor and caught a long coat folding behind the far corner. Not a flourish, just economy. The kind of movement you make when you already know the distances. I held the stairwell door with 2 fingers and listened before giving it any more of me. Concrete breathes differently than carpet. When a person is on the other side, the door learns their temperature. It felt like it was learning. Below, in the lobby, the wet trail turned once toward the security desk, and then away the way shy animals do when they smell glass. The first ovals were drying into the stone as cleaner ghosts, the kind polish doesn't bully out later, like proof had decided to settle in. I looked at the camera grid because I wanted a lie that would comfort me. The garage feed put him back exactly where I had just walked earlier, as if the place itself was looping a point. He didn't wave. He tilted, listening to a building that liked him. The intercom on the locked front glass coughed twice with no voice. The tiny speaker at my desk hissed like it had a story, and then forgot the words. I moved down the hall with elbows close, small steps that didn't gift the floor too much. The hinge on the next office breathed once, air trading places, no latch sound. I tasted metal, which I always do when nerves come through my teeth. Day shift's bat pushpin held a laminated fire drill map too low on the corkboard. I watched it jitter twice in a draft that didn't belong to ventilation. Behind me, another wet step set itself on the carpet and tried to pretend it had always been there. I didn't turn. Turning makes people rush their next choice. I wanted him to keep the measured pace. The lobby camera showed the prints reaching the corridor that leads to the stair I was holding. The next camera up the chain should have taken the handoff. It didn't. The timeline put a polite hole where the minutes would matter later. I eased the stair door wider and let the well give me its truth. Somewhere below, heel-toe, settled into something I recognized. Someone who has practiced moving without letting the building keep score. The difference between quiet and trained is a half-breath between steps. He had that half-breath. He kept it. I told dispatch what I could say without making us all sound like October's pets. Suspicious mail, long coat, bare prints, from lobby elevator to core corridor, stairwell sounds not mine. Observe, wait for backup, they said, the words we all used to cover the part where nobody wants a story to pick a side. Up at my end, the air cooled along my wrists the way it does when a door below lets go 2 fingers worth. The paper pumpkin on the elevator panel had finally lost its last stick and lay face down beside a drying heel like it knew which way the night was going. I put my palm near the stair door without touching. You can learn heat that way. It felt like a throat that had just swallowed. The elevator behind me made the quiet knock it does when the weight inside shifts toward the doors. It didn't open. The garage feed showed the coat reappearing in the same cone I'd already counted, like the building was helping him reset the scene. I let the stair door close to a coin's width and took one breath I could live with. Then I slid into the well and let the concrete decide if it liked me as much as it liked him. I slid into the well and let the concrete decide if it liked me. Doors talk if you let them. I put my ear where the metal cools last and heard breath that wasn't mine, wet around the edges, the kind you get when bare skin meets tile. He wasn't hurrying. He was tasting distance. I held the door with 2 fingers so it wouldn't throw a hinge story into the shaft. The carpet's dead air stayed behind me. The stairs' colder current pressed my wrist hairs toward the landing below. I gave dispatch what they needed without the part that would make me sound like October's pet. Stairwell contact, unknown male, bare prints in lobby, holding for backup. The operator said the words we all keep in our pockets. Observe, do not engage. Radio traffic from other sites bled past. Fog machines setting off smoke heads, masked subject, who turned out to be a man in a hoodie, a dog in a cape, and then the channel put its hands in its lap. He took a step on the landing below that told me he'd learned to let the building set the metronome. Heel, hold the half-breath, toe. People who practice give sound less to eat. I eased the door wider until the gap was the thickness of a coin and let the well pour truth through it. Concrete gave back the small slaps of water leaving a foot, then a pause like a decision, then the soft complaint of rubber on a rail you don't mean to touch. I moved down 1 flight, body kept small, boots set edgewise so I didn't feed echo. On the next landing, water had drawn a crescent where a foot had paused before choosing up. Not much. Enough. The stair light made every drop look like it had an idea. Above me, the corridor I'd left gave a dry knock, the sound of an elevator's weight shifting just shy of a call. I let it be the elevator and felt the part of me that didn't want to believe reach for it like a handrail. The building did not argue. It just kept breathing. On the lobby feed, a new oval appeared outside the elevator doors, and then another, and then the trail broke where the floor turns matte near the security desk. The prints didn't stop. They stopped choosing to be seen. Halloween lives in that choice. Day shift's plastic cauldron by the console tipped a little in the draft from the vestibule, and one last fun-size wrapper lifted, tried the air, and fell. I took another step down. He did too. Not a chase, something worse. 2 people buying time from the same staircase. He stopped where a runner stops to listen for the person who thinks they're the only one listening. I stopped above him with my throat making the small, dry clicks radios make when you forget to key. "Second Unit 5 out," dispatch said, calm like April. It sounded farther away than 5 minutes ever has. He moved again, but not toward me. The cadence climbed, a slip half a step late, corrected before it could become a sound. I pressed the hinge with my shoulder until it couldn't vibrate and let him pass that floor into the slot of hallway where the camera cone thins. Through the wired glass, a shadow of coat crossed and was gone. No flourish, just economy. I stayed in the well and counted heartbeats until mine learned to stand still. Then I went the long way back to the console, because sometimes the honest thing is to admit the wall knows more than you do. On the monitor, the timeline gave me the smile of a person who rehearses. The minutes I needed weren't black. They were present and calm in a way cameras don't manage by themselves, a neat rectangle of nothing where the world had been loud. Earlier footage breathed, compression ghosts sliding in corners, a little shimmer when the air handler took a sip. In the gap, the hallway behaved like a photograph. I scrubbed backward to prove I wasn't begging for ghosts. There I was, a reflection in the lobby glass, small as a fish, while the empty elevator arrived and gave the floor those first perfect prints. Scrub forward, the prints walk away, then the angle changes, and the story remembers to be normal. Surgical is what a tech would call it, if a tech wasn't busy not calling it anything. I clipped the piece I could clip and filled the report with careful words. Anomaly in recording window, apparent timeline inconsistency, area shows no pixel fluctuation, phrases that make you sound tired instead of afraid. The candy cauldron slid another inch on the console with the building's draft and tapped my elbow like it wanted a better sentence. Backup slid in through the front, boots that didn't apologize. We did a sweep by the book. angle, corners. Bathrooms amplify nerves. Mechanical rooms pretend to be about air when they're about secrets. On 5, the office door I'd found open sat guilty but clean. Inside, the doodled square on the notepad had a fingerprint smear at the darkest center, too smudged to be useful, too real to be ignored. In the garage, the drain wore a thin ring of lint like a collar, and under a sedan's frame there was a shoulder-sized clean patch in dust, exactly where a body would be if it had been a body a few minutes ago and preferred not to be seen. We came up empty because empty was the point. The officer looked at the DVR's polite rectangle and didn't say edited. He said, "Huh," like a man finding a door where a wall used to be. He took my statement with a pen that didn't scratch and asked if I was sure about Bear. I told him about the arches and the way the edges collapse as water leaves skin, the way tile holds a heel longer than polish. He wrote Bear and underlined it once, like a dare. When they left, the building returned to its practiced hum. The elevator knocked its little uncalled knock. The intercom coughed and forgot its line. I went back to the stairwell because I wanted one honest sound to close the night with. The metal cooled under my palm the way roofs cool before dawn. 4 steps down, the tread with the old repair sang the high note I'd learned to expect, and then didn't when I came back up, like someone had lightened it at the right second while I was gone and left the echo for me as a receipt. I stood still until the well gave me nothing, which is the only gift it knows how to give on schedule. On the lobby camera, one last thin, wet oval showed up where the stone meets carpet, too small for a new print, too perfect to be chance, and then it faded the way good evidence likes to practice. I wrote building secure because the form wants that exact phrase. I added footage anomaly persisted because I wanted the morning to have a job. I turned my chair to face the door instead of the monitors, a habit I hate. The bat pushpin on the bulletin board held the fire map crooked, a little wind-deaf flag that didn't know it was the only thing moving. Somewhere below, the drain counted and then stopped, and then counted again. And when the stairwell let one soft breath slip under the door, I decided to wait inside it, not above it, for whatever his next decision was. I changed my route by 7 minutes and a floor, because people who practice learn your music and hum along. Instead of chasing the garage, I took the stair up 1 level and walked above myself, letting my steps make a simple pattern I could recognize when someone else tried to borrow it. Carpet blunts truth, concrete keeps score. I kept to concrete. The week of Halloween leaves small leftovers. The paper pumpkin on the elevator panel hung by one corner now, trying to fall with dignity. The bat pushpin held the fire map crooked like it had a sense of humor. Day shift had taken the good candy and left a sack of fruit chews that smelled like a memory of fruit. The plastic cauldron thumped the console when the vestibule breathed. I counted soft, 5, 5, 5, down the corridor on 6, and listened for my echo below on 5. For 7 beats, someone matched me like a mirror, then slid a half count late the way dancers test partners. I stopped. The echo kept a phantom step, then went still, trained, not shy. Quiet tries to be nothing. Trained decides which piece of you gets to exist. I turned the corner to the fire door that never loves me. The closer arm likes to settle proud. The latch likes to pretend it doesn't care. I pressed my palm half an inch from the metal and felt the hinge declare the room beyond was shut. I waited with the door at a coin's width and let the hallway do the talking. The latch lifted from the other side, no hand, no keys, a thin tool kissing metal until the tongue remembered about mercy. The door eased 2 inches and closed itself with no lip smack. Air traded places like 2 people swapping seats without anyone noticing. If you've ever watched a locksmith pull a latch with a sliver of spring steel, you know the sound, not a click, a decision. Radio said backup was on the way for an unrelated October mess across town, fog machine, smokehead, the usual, and then gave me back my breathing. I stayed one floor above and let the stair core be the wire between us. On the garage feed, he reappeared exactly where he lives now in my head. Same pillar, same tilt, same measured distance from the painted stall number, as if the building had a favorite pocket to keep him in. The lobby elevator dinged without a call. I had wiped the car camera at shift start. The lens likes to collect fingerprints it didn't ask for. When the doors parted this time, a round, perfect palm smear sat at knee height like a stamp that had decided to come back. I watched it fog when the car's breath changed. People who practice leave the same note in the same place until you learn the tune. He rode the blind seam along the corridor, hugging the line where the cone thins, keeping his shoulders turned so the camera gets outlines, not admissions. Bear prints didn't show on this floor. The carpet held only a darker suggestion that dried as you stared. On the stone landing where the carpet gives up, a single, clean half-moon of water sat like punctuation. Toe, not heel. He'd paused to listen, and then moved. I walked the length of 6, slow enough that the motion strips ahead would bloom in sections and tell me if someone wanted darkness more than I did. Lights woke in obedient slices. No shadow outran its slice. Behind me, the stairwell door gave a private breath, the kind hinges make when they've been taught to be light. The gap never widened. All the movement was in the pressure. I called dispatch and offered only nouns and verbs, unknown male, lower garage, bare prints in lobby, probable tool at latch, 1 floor shadowing, holding. The operator said, "Copy, continue to observe," like a lullaby for liability. I didn't say the part where I could feel his timing in my knees. The intercom coughed twice with no voice and kept a little hiss, like it wanted a story and forgot how to start. The plastic cauldron bumped my elbow again, drift, pushing it an inch, and a fruit chew wrapper ticked across the console like a bug. On the lobby feed, the trail evaporated the way the good ones do, choices, not footprints. The elevator stopped at 5 without a call and held its doors a finger shy of open, the way steel does when people have been too close to it. The palm smear in the car's lens had multiplied. A thumb ghost now overlapped the first hand, both at the same knee height. I wiped the lens with a cloth and took a picture of the nothing I made. Cameras hate being honest. They prefer to either breathe or be mannequins. I stood at the stair door on 6 and let my knuckles rest on the push bar without giving it weight. Below, heel toe started again and then broke, half off beat, like a person trying to walk in time with their own echo and failing because the echo had other plans. He stopped at the landing under me. I could feel that stop carry up the rail, a tiny tightening in metal. I pictured the long coat folding behind a corner with no flourish. I pictured bare feet drying into carpet and then choosing stone. I pictured a palm planting at knee height, again and again, because repetition is a kind of ownership. The door under my hand asked me quietly if I was brave or smart. I picked smart. Smart is mostly not opening things. He lifted another latch with the same thin kiss, 2 floors down this time. The sound travelled like a rumour, arrived late and truer for the delay. I told the stairwell I'd wait. It told me, in drafts and the angle of my wrist hairs, that someone was below who liked the same song I did, but knew a better verse. The garage feed took him back like a stagehand resetting a prop, pillar, tilt, pace. A delivery van rolled past the ramp mouth and through a new rectangle of light that made the dust dance. The figure didn't hurry. He let the van's shape pass over him like weather. The gate log said no movement and the motor housing looked bored. Nothing moved. Everything had just moved. I took the elevator down 1 floor because I wanted eyes on the corridor see me loves. As the doors slid, the paper pumpkin finally surrendered and dropped face down to the sill, sticking for a second before shrugging off. It slid along the track and stopped at my boot. I picked it up because superstitions are just small tasks you can control. I set it on the call button shelf like a witness I could vouch for. On 5, the hallway smelled faintly of the cleaner they use when they want to convince the nose of order. Halfway down, the office door that had sat 2 inches open earlier was now proud and flush. I put my ear to it and heard nothing but the building's practiced hum, quiet, not trained, and that's how you know he was gone before you arrived. I set my palm near the electrical faceplate by the stair, knee height, same as the wall touch I'd seen in another building once, and felt the metal cool where a warm hand might have been. There was a fresh chip on the plate's edge, clean as a bite, the kind you get when plastic meets tool and pretends it enjoyed it. I took a photo that would look like a photo of nothing. Nothing is a kind of proof if you know where it belongs. The elevator behind me breathed and decided it wouldn't be needed after all. The intercom gave one short sigh, almost a word, and then practiced silence. I logged no contact because forms want that. I added latch lift from opposite side and lens smear recurring at knee height because the morning should have something to argue with. I went back to the console to see if the DVR had learned better manners. It hadn't. The honest footage breathed compression ghosts, small flickers at the edges. The minutes that meant money behaved like a museum piece. I scrubbed frame by frame out of spite and got what spite always gets you. The same answer, slower. Backup, called in, clear from the lot. We did the long sweep together, announce angle corners, lockers, bathrooms that teach you about echo, mechanical closets that pretend to be about air. We came up empty because empty was the point. The officer stared at the lens smear I'd cleaned and said, "You don't want to know my theory." I told him I wanted facts more than theories. He laughed once, kindly, and wrote follow-up recommended in a neat hand. I sat back down and turned the chair to face the door again, a habit I hate. The bat pushpin on the fire map looked like it had opinions. The cauldron thumped my elbow one last time and went still. The drain in the garage counted 3 and stopped. Somewhere below, a shoe that wasn't wearing a shoe chose a different route. And I decided to test something simple. If I walked 1 floor below and held still at the hinge, would his timing choose me or the building? The test I wanted would have to wait. The front buzzer went twice in the flat, annoyed tone drivers use when the night keeps them longer than their route. I watched him on the lobby feed, hood up against mist that wasn't there, clipboard hugged to his ribs, a company cap with the brim chewed. Halloween week had left a paper pumpkin ghost on the glass, a cleaner square where tape had been. He held the parcel like it might run. "Graveyard drop," he said through the crack, eyes flicking past my shoulder the way civilians do when they meet an empty building. Just so you know, when I pulled in, looked like a guy under a car, like on one of those creeper things, only no wheels." He wasn't the storytelling type. He handed me the signature pad and kept his fingers clear of mine, like he was avoiding a joke we hadn't told. "Which space?" He tapped the map I slid across, a nail landing 2 stalls down from the pillar with the old paint scrape. "There. Gone when I came back from the door." He sniffed, wiped his nose with the back of his wrist, and asked if we were doing like a haunted house thing, then judged his own sentence and said never mind. As his tail lights climbed the ramp, I took the elevator down, no rush, the kind of pace that keeps your knees honest. The garage met me with that thick quiet that feels padded. I kept the light low and let my shoes read grit. 2 stalls down from the paint scrape, the concrete wore a shoulder-sized clean patch in dust and a smear of oil the shape of someone's weight. Not fresh, not old, exactly recent. You know the angle if you've ever reached blind for a socket with your cheek against a tire, I didn't crawl under the sedan. I crouched by the line of dust and watched how the particles had fallen back in. A finger-width drift toward the drain, one dark fleck that had skated farther than gravity owed it. I took a photo that would look like nothing later and wrote possible shoulder print because shoulder is the only word the page will take. The drain counted once, then once again. Back upstairs, the intercom breathed a half word and gave up. The paper pumpkin I'd rescued sat on the call shelf like a jury. The plastic cauldron by the console bumped my elbow as the vestibule sighed, and a fruit chew wrapper made a dry little trip across the desk, stopped by the mousepad like it had business there. The DVR gave me its polite mannequin for the window that mattered. I scrubbed into earlier footage for relief and found life. Bitrate ghosts in the corners, a shimmer when the air handler took a breath. In our minutes, the hallway did perfect nothing. The controller's event count ticked once, the pretty log didn't. I wrote telling after doing in my notebook because the contractor had earned the phrase, Euro 58. The elevator cycled its child's pattern without a call, G, 2, 4, 3, and then idled at G with the doors parted a finger's width, the way steel does when a person had been too close, and the machine remembered. The car camera wore a fresh knee-height palm smear where I had wiped it earlier. A new thumb ghost overlapped the first. Repetition felt like handwriting. I did my one-floor shadow again, walked 6 to hear 5. For 9 beats, a partner I didn't invite matched me half a count late. At the end of the run he broke off. A door eased somewhere with a locksmith's small mercy. I stood still and let the corridor decide whether it liked me. The fire map on the corkboard jittered once on the bat pushpin and lay quiet. I radioed possible witness report under vehicle, probable tool at latch, uncalled elevator cycles, recurring lens contact. Dispatch said copy like a bedtime story. Another site complained about a fog machine that refused to learn, then went quiet. I wrote the driver's words the way he gave them, like on a creeper without wheels. People who don't know our language often give the best lines to reports. 0117. On the lobby stone just outside the elevator, a new, smaller wet oval appeared, too small for a full print, too perfect for chance, as if the floor had remembered one toe longer than the others. It faded at the pace of air. The camera tried to breathe and then remembered it had manners to keep. I took a picture anyway. On 5, the office door that had been proud now rode the latch with a sliver of honesty showing. I put a fingertip to the pushplate and leaned an ear. The room beyond had the stale coffee and printer dust that says, no one lives there and everyone uses it. I backed away and watched the grain of carpet tell me the last step taken wasn't mine. If you've ever watched pile lay down against foot traffic, you know the way it prefers a story. Past the stairwell at knee height, the electrical faceplate had a new chip on its edge, clean bite, crescent sliver on the floor that hadn't walked yet. I photographed the nothing. I let my hand hover half an inch from the plate and felt cool where warm should have been if I were telling myself lies. Temperature gets shy under eyes, you learn to feel it sideways. I wrote edge chip, recent, and drew a dot on my sketch next to the seam he favors. The freight elevator thunked its latch like a person who doesn't know the trick. Favor the right, then got what they wanted anyway. By the time I reached it, the cage was down, the head polite, the metal at hip height holding a stripe of warmth, the width of a hand. I wrote no fault, and then surface warm because I have 2 audiences, the paper and my future self. 10132, the gate log, posted no movement while the chain itself shivered a whisper I only noticed because the light over the ramp flicked once in sympathy. Hardware has a way of telling on itself if you listen with the parts of your body the job has stolen already. I took one slow loop through the garage, staying out of lines I'd already drawn with my light. Under another sedan, way back by the axle, a second shoulder-sized clean patch lived in dust. Whatever had been there used a different side of the body this time, the smear skewed left. I thought about the way water leaves skin differently from tile, about how dust tells on shoulders better than it does on fingers. Back topside, the intercom decided it had a word after all and offered a single "hey" in a voice that could have been a radio echo. When I answered, it remembered it wasn't brave and hissed. The candy cauldron, tired of being a metronome, finally stayed where it belonged. I sat with the monitors and gave myself one rule. If the elevator cycled without a call again, I'd hold the stair hinge on 4 instead of 5 and see if his timing chose me or just the building. You can't catch a person who practices by moving fast. You catch them by borrowing their patience. 0146 G243. The doors on G parted a finger's width and waited for a shoulder that didn't come back. The palm smear fogged and cleared, fogged, cleared. I stood, took the long way to 4, set my shoulder to the hinge, and learned the well's temperature like a mouth learns a spoon. He took the landing below like a decision, heel, half-breath, toe, small water sounds where carpet had kept his secret earlier. I let him pass under without giving the door my weight. He slipped into the corridor seam I had chosen for him and liked, and for 3 seconds we held the same piece of building from 2 angles, 2 owners with different paperwork. I let the seconds climb to 9. He paused at the far end, the way a person pauses to listen to a room like a radio. That pause is its own language. On the lobby feed, the stone outside the car took one last wet oval, then remembered to be tile. The DVR breathed in the corners like a living thing during minutes that didn't matter, then smoothed into museum when it did. 0203, the stair door below me made the private sound hinges make when someone has taught them to be gentle. The corridor gave back a trace of disinfectant, printer dust, and the sweet, thin smell of a fruit chew wrapper that had found a warm place to die. I called it in, holding at 4, contact below, unknown male, cadence trained. The operator said, "Second unit 3 out, 3 minutes, can be a season." He moved again, but not toward me. His cadence climbed toward 5. I didn't chase. I gave the door a coin width and let the building choose who it liked more. Above, on 6, a delayed thin clack told me a tool had kissed a latch and gotten what it wanted. The sound traveled late and truer for the delay. I wrote tool lift, remote, and kept my hand where it was. I went back to the console because the only honest thing I had left was watching cameras breathe. In the garage feed, a delivery van's boxy shape rolled past the ramp mouth and gave dust something to dance in. The figure in the coat didn't reappear. The pillar where he likes to stand looked like it wanted him. The drain counted 3, stopped, counted 2. Numbers started to feel like company. I opened the incident and put words in their places. Witness, observed possible person under vehicle, shoulder print in dust, uncalled elevator cycles, lens, smear recurring at knee height, faceplate edge chip, tool sound at latch, recording anomaly, continues. I didn't write bear again. I didn't have to. The cleaned stone kept the outline of what had walked on it a little paler than the rest. The radio clicked. Unit 2 on site. Good boots, honest angles. We did the sweep slow enough to let nerves do what they do, and not so slow that they run the show. Bathrooms pretended to be about tile. Mechanical pretended to be about air. The officer found the same shoulder smear I'd found and made a face that said he hated agreeing with me. Bear? He asked, because people like tidy categories. Bear, I said, because categories sometimes tell the truth. He looked at the DVR's museum moment and didn't say edited. He said clean in a voice that didn't like the word. He wrote review vendor in a neat hand and underlined it. He told me to get some water. I told him I'd forgotten what water tastes like when it isn't a hallway. By the time he left, it was 0231 and the building had gone back to its hum. I took the stair to 4 to see if patience owed me a favor. On the landing, the crescent of water I'd seen earlier had dried into a cleaner mark like proof that didn't care to impress anyone. The hinge gave me nothing fancy. The rail kept its cool. I put my ear to the door because I wanted one honest sound. There, soft, wet breath on the other side, as if skin had remembered tile and didn't want to say it out loud. The push bar under my palm dipped a millimeter without moving. Not a push, a hand learning weight. And I held still because the next inch belonged to him, and I needed to know if he'd spend it on me or on the building. I gave him a different song. Wrong order, longer pauses, a loud pocket of keys where I usually keep them quiet. I let the vending machine on too, hear me for once. I took the elevator up with my thumb barely on the door open, so the weight would register like a body that couldn't decide. If he was copying my cadence, I wanted him to trip on it. Leftovers from Halloween held their posts. The paper pumpkin I'd propped on the cool shelf watched like a jury. The bat pushpin kept the fire map crooked. The plastic cauldron was down to fruit chews and 2 mints that looked like they'd lived whole lives in somebody's desk. The lobby smelled faintly of cleaner and sugar. I walked 6 slow, 5 count, 5 count, 5 count, and listened to 5 answer. For 9 beats someone matched from below, then slid half a count late, the way practiced people test your patience. I stopped in front of the fire door that never loves me and let the gap sit at a coin's width. The latch on 5 lifted from the hall side with a thin kiss of metal. Not a click, a decision. The door eased 2 inches, confessed, and closed itself without pride. I didn't open mine, trained, not brave. I followed the stair down one flight, toes on edges so I didn't feed echo. A half moon of water sat at the stone landing like punctuation, heavier on one side, left foot. The carpet beyond held a darker suggestion that dried. If you stared too long, the way lies do when they get help from time. On the lobby feed, 3 faint ovals appeared where the polisher had left a new shine, brighter patches shaped like pads of a foot. Not wet this time, just a different gloss where skin had borrowed wax. They walked 2 steps and then learned not to be seen. I took a photo that would look like nothing and wrote polish disturbance. 3 pads because pads is as close as a report lets you get to skin. The elevator ran its child's pattern, G243, without a call, then idled at G with the doors a finger shy of honest. I'd wiped the car lens an hour earlier. The knee-height palm smear had the courtesy to come back. A new fog haloed it when the cabin's air changed. I cleaned it again, cameras like giving you chores. I did the reverse cadence, fast where I'm slow, slow where I'm fast, and let the hallway strips bloom out of order to see if he preferred dark or timing. On 5, the motion woke in sections, obedient, nobody outrunning their slice. The electrical faceplate at knee height wore a second clean chip on the opposite corner, small crescent on the carpet like a new moon. The metal felt cool where a hand should have been warm. I logged edge chip, fresh, and kept my hand off the evidence I wanted to touch. Back downstairs, the garage kept its aquarium calm. The pillar with the old paint scrape looked like it had been waiting for me, and the dust line where a coat had brushed earlier had softened into a suggestion. Under a sedan farther back, a shoulder-sized clean patch in dust skewed right this time, mirror to the other. The drain counted twice, stopped, counted once. If you listen to numbers long enough, they start to feel like company. I gave him a gift. I dropped my keys on purpose in the stairwell, a ringing, stupid clatter I'd never allow myself. Echo ran up the well like an alarm. He answered by not answering, which is its own language. When the sound died, he took 1 step, heel, half-breath, toe. Trained people buy their time in half-breaths. Dispatch checked in with the bedtime voice. Status? I said, holding, unknown male shadowing, uncalled elevator cycles, probable tool at latches, polish artifacts. Another site complained about a fog machine that wouldn't learn the difference between drama and a smoke head. October's last noises kept pretending to be relevant, and then weren't. I put my shoulder to the hinge on 4 and learned the door's temperature like a spoon. Below, his cadence moved to 3, paused, then climbed. The bad repair tread sang its high note, late by 1 count, as if he'd decided mid-step to spend sound differently. Through the wired glass, a long coat crossed the far end of the corridor with no flourish, just economy, and the motion strip lit 1 panel too early, which means he'd learned the angle. I tried one more trick. I took the elevator down and held door open long enough to register weight while I didn't add any. The cabin's air shifted as if a shoulder had leaned on steel. The doors shivered a coin's width wider, the lens fogged at a knee height, cleared, fogged. I wiped the smear again and took a picture of the nothing I made, because sometimes the only proof is how many times you have to erase the same mark. The DVR gave me honesty for minutes that didn't matter, compression ghosts, tiny bitrate arguments in the corners. In the window that did, it behaved like a museum exhibit, not black, not broken, just perfect. Surgical is the word techs don't like saying. I wrote window, mannequin, because the contractor had earned the metaphor. H153, the intercom on the lobby glass, coughed and remembered a word. Hey! Not a prank voice, not the driver's, not mine. I answered and got hiss. The plastic cauldron rattled one last fruit chew against its own emptiness and then was still. I went for proof I could own. I knelt at the stone outside the lobby elevator where the first wet prints had been and felt with the back of my fingers for the faint, cooler floor keeps where water once was. The stone was honest. My hand came up with a ring of dust shaped like a heel's edge. I showed it to no one and wrote cool residue present because papers like dignity even when you're telling them about dust. A207, the stair below me exhaled and then didn't. The hinge under my shoulder grew a fraction warmer, and a single drop, condensation not rain, found my wrist from the landing above. Skin keeps its own weather. I didn't look up. Looking up is a way of giving your throat away. I told dispatch I wanted a second unit, not because it would catch him, but because I needed the building to choose which uniform it liked. Copy. 10 out, they said. Longer than I wanted, shorter than nights are by themselves. He gave me a close thing then. 2 steps on the landing above that weren't mine, each placed like it had been taught not to advertise. The push bar under my palm dipped a millimeter without moving. The weight a hand learns when it tests a door it doesn't want to open yet. I kept my breath shallow enough to hurt and let him have the silence he'd earned. He took the corridor instead, hugging the seam where the cone thins. On the lobby feed, the polisher's gloss brightened under 3 pads again, then gave up the trick. The elevator cycled G243 and held at G with the doors a finger shy, as if a shoulder had argued and then negotiated. The gate to the street, on a different screen, stayed honest for once. Small mercies. I decided to give myself one more tell. I set a folded receipt on the lobby floor just outside the elevator doors, edges touching the threshold line, then went back to the stair. If the doors opened wide for anyone, draft or shoulder would shift the slip. I'm not proud of tricks, I prefer ears, but paper can be a witness when cameras practice being mannequins. Woe 219, the receipt turned a 1/4 inch, then crept back like it regretted having told me anything. The doors never opened far, air had moved with a body close to steel. The lens fogged at knee height, cleared, fogged. I wiped the smear again without cursing, because the job makes you polite to machines. The controller's event count ticked once, the pretty log didn't. I put telling after doing on the line again and hated that I had a phrase for it. The drain in the garage counted 2, stopped, counted 1, as if it were keeping time with a half-breath I couldn't see. I radioed for a supervisor and the other company. If we were going to sweep, I wanted bodies who like corners as much as I do. En route came back, tired, competent, welcome. I held the hinge and listened to the building like it was going to tell me which of us it preferred. He took one last step on the landing above, not a footfall, pressure and the faintest wet squeak, as if a pad had learned a new section of stone and didn't want to. My wrist hair lifted and then lay down. The well breathed once through my teeth, and the push bar under my hand gave that millimeter again, the weight of a question that hadn't picked a side. And I kept the door at a coin's width, counting breaths, while Backup's boots came up the ramp like an answer the building would have to respect. Backup's boots came up the ramp with the kind of rhythm buildings respect. We split the grid. They took top down, I took bottom up. The other company floated the garage, announce it, angle, corners. Bathrooms pretend they're about tile, mechanical pretends it's about air. The DVR kept its museum window where I needed a life, honest breathing everywhere else, mannequin stillness when it mattered. On 5, the office door that never behaves gave us good posture, and nothing inside but printer dust and the notepad tunnel someone had doodled to darkness. On the lobby stone, the first run of wet ovals had dried into cleaner shapes the buffer won't bully out, proof that decided to show up as subtraction. In the garage, the officer slid a mirror under 2 sedans and found only the shape that dust leaves when a shoulder has been there and doesn't want to be the story anymore. We regrouped at the stairwell. The hinge under my palm warmed a millimeter without moving. Above us, pressure changed the way it does when a door farther up breathes twice and chooses not to open. Everyone felt it. Nobody said there. The youngest officer cut his eyes to me like a question he'd already answered. "We sweep again," his sergeant said, which can mean for the report or for luck. Second pass, slower. Freight gate down, head polite. Metal at hip height holding a human stripe of warmth that won't argue with a thermometer. Electrical faceplate at knee level with a new chip you can only see if you hate chips. Elevator doing its child's pattern, G243 holding at G, with doors a coin's width, shy like a shoulder has recently negotiated with steel. I set a folded receipt on the threshold again. It turned, then regretted it, then lay still. We stood by the DVR because what else do you do? The officer didn't say edited, he said clean in a voice that knew better. We logged review vendor and timeline anomaly persists. Then the sergeant asked the question I'd been skirting. You staying on nights? The stairwell answered for me. One soft, wet step above, then nothing. It's hard to keep a face on when a building is choosing who it likes. Transfers are open next month, I told him, which is how a person admits their knees know more than their pride. We cleared one more time because the form wants 3. Empty, because empty was the point. I wrote building secure the way you write a goodbye you haven't said out loud yet. When they left, I sat with my back to the door I hate and watched the lens fog at knee height. Clear, fog, clear, like breath practicing being human. I didn't wipe it. I let the camera keep one lie I could see. By morning I had a decision, and the building had the last word. One faint, polish-bright pad on the lobby stone, catching light and then letting it go as the sun took the glass. I put in for days and got them. A week later, I covered a stray overnight and pretended that meant I'd quit slowly. The DVR still breathed everywhere except where the story wanted money. The elevator still did its child's pattern when no one called it. The faceplate at knee height wore a second crescent chip, tiny and proud. The intercom coughed, forgot its line, and hissed. The witness driver came back once and didn't mention creepers without wheels. He signed with a different pen and looked over my shoulder less. The janitor stopped wiping the crescent by the rear hinge because I'd asked her to. The floor stayed honest there. longer than anywhere else. The bat pushpin held the fire map straight again. Someone had fixed it without liking that they cared. The paper pumpkin finally found the trash. The plastic cauldron went back to whatever closet holiday decorations haunt. We never got a face. The vendor said no fault found with a politeness that tasted like liability. The timeline gap never learned to breathe. I wrote my last overnight incident with careful words. No intruder located, video window inconsistent, polished disturbance observed, uncalled elevator cycles, probable tool at latches, advise continued patrol emphasis. Then I rotated to days and told myself garages were just rooms with cars in them. 2 weeks into daylight, I parked downtown and caught myself mapping pillars like ribs, counting half-breaths between steps, listening for the one sound my memory won't stop making, a wet pad setting itself down just off my rhythm. I don't believe in ghosts, I believe in practice. That's worse sometimes. When I have to use a garage now, I keep my keys quiet and my shoulders away from the rail. I glance at the elevator lens for a fog at knee height and at the lobby stone for 3 brighter pads where polish remembers feet better than cameras remember time. If I hear a door decide to breathe behind me, I don't speed up. I let it choose who it likes. I left the site within a month. The report closed without a suspect. The DVR shipped and returned with a shrug. The polish finally evened the lobby stone, so all it reflects is light. Halloween turned into ordinary again. The building went back to humming like it had never learned a better song. Still, some nights, concrete parking levels smell like printer dust and disinfectant if I think too hard, and if rain has been anywhere close, I hear it. One soft, wet step that isn't mine, a breath I didn't make, a cadence that's learned me. I don't look for the figure anymore, I look for the choice, where the trail stops needing to be seen and the cameras turn perfect exactly when I need them least. My first night as a mobile trainee should have been easy. Perimeter checks, doors and gates, light logs, a coffee between sites. It was Halloween weekend. The clinic looked half asleep, even in daylight. At night, it was a stack of dark windows and a vending machine glow that made the lobby look like a fish tank. Day shift had left paper pumpkins scotch-taped to the glass, and a banner about flu shots with a ghost someone had drawn in the margin. Our radio carried October noise from other posts, prank pulls, costume complaints, a fog machine that kept arguing with a smoke head. We rolled up at 01:15. The underground gate was standing open like a mouth that forgot itself. The front glass had a crack through the corner near the lock, radiating little white lines like a frost pattern. My trainer killed the headlights and said, "If somebody forced entry, the alarm should be screaming." Dispatch showed no alarm history. He grunted in a way that meant, "Now it's ours." We took the slow walk. Loading dock leveler seated, pharmacy delivery hatch locked, sticker half peeled where couriers picket it. Dumpster gate unchained when it should have been chained. The chain lay in a neat loop like someone had set it down instead of dropping it. The alley smelled like bleach and wet cardboard. A night bus slid by on the far street and made the whole building exhale once. Inside, the lobby's disinfectant and printer dust mix, the feeling medical spaces hold even when no one's in them. A plastic cauldron with 3 sad candies sat on the reception desk. The good ones had migrated to somebody's pocket earlier. My trainer keyed us in. The door made that soft seal pop buildings use to say you're responsible now. We worked the ground floor. Waiting room chairs square to each other, coat rack empty except for one disposable poncho. The pediatric corner had a cardboard skeleton taped to a bookshelf. The vending machine hummed like it knew it was the brightest thing for a mile. Elevators slept with their eyes open. I wrote times into a log that makes managers feel like they were there. At the garage level, the open gate stared back at us like it didn't know the word. No scrape on the track, no pry on the control head cover. The motion above the ramp flicked once and then decided not to help. "Gate's supposed to be on timed close," my trainer said, "which is a sentence you write down so you can prove later that you heard it." We came back up. The elevator panel woke as we walked past. No call, no hand, just a patient sequence. G, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, the top. The numbers made that soft relay sound you hear more in your teeth than your ears. My trainer and I stopped the same way you stop when a dog raises its head behind a fence. "Let it finish," he said, like a superstition and a rule at the same time. The doors slid and showed us ourselves in stainless. Empty car, no prints on the sill rubber. The lobby air moved across our knees like a small tide. We watched the indicators pause on 4 and stay there, a polite lamp behind a door you haven't opened yet. Dispatch checked in, bored on the surface. We gave them the short, garage gate open, front glass cracked, no alarm, elevator cycling on its own. Another sight stepped on the radio with a joke about a vampire coughing into a stairwell mic. The operator told them to clear and then came back to us with the voice they use when a thing is becoming a thing. "Copy. Verify floors 1 through 4. If you get stairwell activity, hold and advise." We took the car. The ride up felt longer than the numbers allowed. 4 opened into a hallway that woke in panels, motion lights lifting ahead of us like someone was walking just out of reach. Clinic doors were closed, status tags flipped to clean. The pharmacy shutter on this floor sat proper, but the bolt wore a shiny new scratch, a little silver kiss you only see if you hate scratches. We moved slow, 2-man hinge, nothing theatrical. Ceiling tiles whispered the way they do when air decides to go somewhere else. Somewhere down the core, a stairwell latch breathed a small sound, metal remembering a hand. We weren't there yet. The building told us anyway. The garage gate below should have been closing itself by now. The panel on the wall beside me blinked a heartbeat and then pretended it hadn't. My trainer said, "If the stair pops, we hold." I nodded and wrote the time I believed the hallway, not the panel. At the far end of 4, a maintenance closet wore a push-button lock that looked tired. A paper sign, supplies, hung from 2 pieces of tape like it wanted to resign. I felt the door with the back of my knuckles. Warm around the latch, cool at the hinge. Air came through at ankle level like a draft learning to stand. Behind us, the elevator murmured as if someone had touched door open without touching it. The indicator stayed on 4. The lobby cameras showed nothing but their own patience. My trainer took 1 step toward the closet and then stopped, listening with his chin like you do when your ears won't admit they heard anything. On the stairwell door down the hall, the closer arm ticked a tiny tick, and then thought better of it. Pressure shifted along my sleeves. Somewhere below, a footstep argued with concrete and lost, then tried again, softer. I wrote the word hold in the margin of my log before anyone said it into the radio. Then the elevator settled deeper on 4 like a person in a chair, and the stairwell gave the smallest breath you can still call a breath. We let the indicator sit on 4 like a lamp behind a door. The building had made its choice. We followed. The car smelled like printer dust and the sugar film Halloween leaves behind. My trainer kept his thumb near door open without touching it, a superstition and a technique. "If we touch nothing and it still listens," he said softly, "that's not us." 4 opened into a hallway that woke in panels, motion strips blooming just ahead, as if someone was walking a room or 2 in front of us. Clinic doors showed clean on their tags. The pediatric corner had a cardboard skeleton taped to a low cabinet, knees forever bent like a runner who never gets to run. The air was the medical mix, disinfectant, paper, a faint plastic sweetness from gloves that had been a day old even yesterday. We moved slow, 2-man hinge, elbows close. The pharmacy shutter sat down, proper, but the bolt wore a tiny silver kiss, fresh metal where paint should be. Not a gouge, a suggestion. My trainer looked at it with the face you keep for things that don't want to be problems yet. "Log it," he said. I wrote bolt scuff. New, because you don't get to write someone practiced. Halfway down, a maintenance closet with a push-button lock gave a warm lick at the latch when I touched it with the back of my knuckles. Heat where you want cool. The paper supplies sign hung from tired tape. Air came through at ankle level, a thin thread that knew which direction the stairwell lived. I pictured risers and chase space and the ways buildings keep their lungs hidden. We paused at the stair door. On the other side, footsteps moved away, soft at first, then more sure, as if the stairs were teaching someone how much sound they could afford. The closer arm gave a polite, private tick, the sound of intent remembering manners. We hadn't called the elevator, its brain still held 4, like a thought it didn't want to lose. Dispatch came on with the October voice, less joking now. "Hold position on 4, supervisor en route. Garage gate still shows open, no alarm history." She didn't say possibly armed, she didn't have to. The word lives in certain silences. We set a small perimeter, one watching the elevator throat, one near the stair hinge. I stood where I could see the pharmacy shutter and the maintenance door at the same time. The caulking line at the baseboard had a recent cut in it, 2 inches long, too neat for wear. I made the note. The note felt bigger than its ink. Down the core, an exam room's HVAC decided to cough and settle. Ceiling tiles flexed and forgot it. The motion lights ahead of us bloomed a panel too early, then corrected themselves, like someone had tested the threshold and stepped back. My trainer tilted his head the way you do when your ears won't admit they heard. We both listened to our breathing and tried to decide if it belonged to us. "Copy your hold," Dispatch said again, softer, as if speaking under a blanket. Supervisor 12 out. 12 minutes is a season when a stairwell is counting for someone else. I looked at the maintenance lock again. One plastic button sat a hair lower than the others, as if a thumb had remembered it recently. I didn't touch it. The rules are simple and easy to lose. Don't open what you can't close on your own. The elevator sighed like a person resettling. No call. 4 stayed lit. In the lobby, our little glass pumpkins on the flue banner shivered when the heater came on. Upstairs, paper on a corkboard lifted twice and then lay still. My trainer checked the pharmacy bolt a second time without touching and said, mostly to himself, "People love hiding places that feel like work." We held. The stairwell down the hall breathed once, just enough to brush my sleeves, and then went quiet in the purposeful way. The garage gate, according to the screen, remained an idea called open. The ground-level glass crack made a star in the corner that caught the camera's light like a wink. I wrote time, place, none of the adjectives that make managers email you back. Somewhere below, a tread sang the short, high note of rubber on painted concrete, and then learned how not to sing it again. Dispatch said 10 out. The elevator kept its lit 4, like a thought a building was proud to have. Waiting is harder than clearing. Clearing gives your hands jobs and lets your legs buy you time. Holding asks for stillness when the floor wants you to pick a side. We posted soft, no extra weight on the hinges, radios low enough to be thought. My trainer stood a half step ahead of me, like he could loan me courage if I ran low. We both watched the door to the stair as if it could blush. Radio traffic from October's other problems drifted past. Fog machine, smoke head, a masked subject who turned out to be a coat on a chair, a cape on a balcony that was a tarp. The operator cleared them gently and came back to us with fewer words each time. Supervisor 9 out. 9 is a different number when you can hear feet learning what your building likes. The elevator hummed in place, a machine practicing patience. The indicator flicked dark, then bright again. Still 4, like a person tapping a finger to keep a beat only they hear. I looked at my trainer. He shook his head once. No rabbit holes, no metal we couldn't justify, no doors we would regret. If he wants space, don't give him our shape, he whispered. I swallowed the urge to test the pushing lock with 2 fingers. The stair gave us a second breath, less pronounced, as if the door farther down had learned it could lift its sweep and get away with it. Air ran along my wrists cool enough to teach my hair new tricks. I put my ear near the hinge without letting it touch and learned temperature like a mouth learns a spoon. Metal keeps secrets, but it leaks how it feels. 7, dispatch said. Advise if you lose visual on elevator. We hadn't had visual, we had implication. The car stayed with us anyway, not moving, like a polite witness who can't testify. Somewhere on 3 a latch clicked and then pretended not to have. The sound arrived late and more honest for it. Out of the corner of my eye, the pharmacy shutter's bolt gleamed in the motion light and looked smug. The maintenance doors paper sign gave one slow sway, a tape fibre letting go and then thinking better of it. I could taste old insulation and glove plastic without smell. Your tongue sometimes learns what your nose won't. We did the small talk we're allowed when we need our mouths to prove we're people. If he's in the riser, he's comfortable, my trainer said. If he's using the stair as a bridge, he's practiced. We don't teach that part. I nodded because there aren't better words. Practice is the piece reports refuse to carry. 5, dispatch said. Supervisor on approach. The word approach is friendlier than en route. It implies a choice. On the lobby cameras, nothing happened with great sincerity. The underground gate on the screen remained open without wanting to show us how. A delivery box truck moved past the alley mouth like punctuation. Somewhere lower, a shoe solved a squeak and kept moving. We waited. The elevator made a gentle knock against itself, a sound doors make when a shoulder has been near recently. It didn't open. We marked our little map with pencil dots, angles of cover, cones of camera, 3 rooms that laugh at motion sensors. I drew a box around the maintenance closet and the pharmacy shutter and wrote later because, after he leaves, is not a field you get. I checked the push buttons with my eyes, not hands. 1 low, 4 straight, 1 shiny from being loved. 3, dispatch said. I heard a second voice on her side, the supervisor's, low and bored and awake. The stairwell rested like a cat that's pretending not to watch you. My throat made a small click like a radio when you forget to key. My trainer gave me 2 fingers. Breathe slower. I pictured the person below us not to make him bigger, but to keep him real, the angle he takes to cross thresholds, the way he holds a half-breath between steps so Echo learns loyalty, the hip that rides doors without giving shoulders away. Bare feet, shoes off in the garage, back on for carpet. I filed guesses in a mental drawer labelled, "No one will print this." 2, dispatch said. The elevator light blinked, 4 to blank, blank to 4, like a machine reminding itself of a promise. The stair gave nothing, which is also something. I realized I could hear the vending machine downstairs through the building's throat, a hum you only notice when you have no other friends. "Unit on site," the supervisor said finally, and the building took a breath of relief it didn't want us to notice. We heard the front glass go polite open. We heard the lobby announce security in a voice we keep for other people. My trainer and I didn't move. We waited to be relieved of this particular kind of patience. The stair under my hand cooled a degree, as if a decision had moved farther from us. The pharmacy bolt dulled in the light. The maintenance paper stopped its small sway. Dispatch said, "Hold for supervisor," as if we had asked to run. he came up the core, announcing by policy and by name. Our radios picked his shoes, honest rubber on tile, long before we saw his jacket. The elevator finally forgot 4 and went blank, like a child being caught with a game in its hand. We traded nods with the supervisor we all borrow courage from, and in that moment the building felt heavier and more honest, which is the only gift ranks can give. "Okay," he said, soft enough to keep the hallway's attention. "We sweep, top to bottom. If it flies, we'll see it fly." He looked at the maintenance lock and the pharmacy bolt and then at us, eyebrows asking, "Did you touch?" We shook our heads. He nodded once like he could live with us. We set our order, front to back, doors called, corners honest, the stair as a hinge that no one takes alone. The supervisor keyed the radio for dispatch and said the line that moves minutes forward. Beginning sweep. We moved on his count, and the building decided whether it wanted to cooperate or to show us how well it keeps secrets. We swept on the supervisor's count, front to back, doors called, corners honest, stair as hinge. 4 kept waking a panel ahead like someone was teaching it manners. At the pharmacy shutter, the bolt's tiny silver kiss looked newer under his light. He didn't touch it. He just said, "Logged," so the air would hear. The maintenance closet wore a tired push-button lock, with one key cap a millimeter low. The way a button looks after a thumb remembers it too often. The paper, supplies sign, swayed once and then gave up. I put the back of my knuckles to the latch. Warm. At ankle level, a thin draft threaded the gap and pulled toward the stair core like a string. Inside, a rack of gloves and sample boxes, a mop head that had never been wet, a low access panel at the baseboard with 2 screws that had been loved more recently than their paint. The supervisor crouched, shined his light without blinding anything, and pointed with a knuckle to the bottom edge, where glossy tape held a corner like a bandage. "You feel that?" he asked, without raising his voice. I didn't have to answer. Warm air breathed through the seam, a quiet, patient breath that belonged to riser space. The kind of heat that says someone left a path behind a wall. He fogged the metal with one sigh, the haze pulled toward the corner where the tape's edge had lifted a hair. He didn't order it open. He put a thin marker dot on the tape, small enough to be a freckle, and said, "If it grows, we'll know." We stood still in the kind of silence that lets small things audition. A zipper-tooth whispered once, then changed its mind. Cloth spoke to concrete in a voice that could have been knees. My trainer lifted his chin and let his radio hang, so the stairwell could keep its own secrets a second longer. The elevator, a hall away, tapped its own patience. 4 blinking off, on, off, like a child keeping a beat no one else enjoys. "Hold here," the supervisor said finally, soft. "We'll clear 3, then come back with eyes." We closed the closet like we'd found it. The push-button caps looked straight until you knew which one wasn't. My notes got smaller the more true they felt. Tape, corner lift, warm seam, zipper sound, don't open. 3 gave us waiting rooms that believed in laminate and chairs that had never learned to be sat in past 9 p.m. A stairwell door breathed out and then remembered in. The vending machine's hum climbed a register, the ceiling tiles whispered and forgot. Below, the panel on the garage gate kept insisting on open without showing us why. The supervisor looked at the air like you look at a light that flickers only when you aren't watching. We came back to the closet. The marker dot had walked a hair with the tape. Half a hair, if you're honest. He didn't say it. He just looked at me and at my trainer like he wanted our faces to agree with his eyes. They did. He set a numbered seal across the corner, ugly, brittle, the kind that tattles. then wrote the number in his book as if numbers can lock a thing that breath can unlock. Down the core, the elevator murmured, as though a thumb had tickled door open without the hand. The indicator stayed on 4, despite our bodies being here to contradict it. Radio. Gate still shows open, no alarms. I could taste glove plastic on the back of my tongue. The supervisor made the decision you're supposed to make. We finished the sweep, he said. No openings, no experiments. If it's a bridge, we'll see footprints on land. We took the stair. The door under my palm cooled a degree, like a choice had moved away from it. Somewhere below, rubber solved a squeak and didn't have to solve it again. We stacked on the landing above the lobby, letting another minute ripen into the kind of answer buildings give. And when the front glass breathed a polite inch on its own, the hallway's pressure turned all of us in the same direction at once. The lobby heard it before we did, the soft seal pop of front glass deciding to help. Our radios all took a breath at once, like a chorus clearing their throats. From the far end of 4, the elevator forgot 4 and went blank, a child caught with a game in its hand. "Lobby," the supervisor said, more to the building than to us. And we moved. Debt collector pace, not drama. Running steps crossed tile, 1, 2, then found concrete and shortened the rhythm to fit. A door took air and gave it back. By the time we hit the second-floor landing, the lobby camera showed the glass easing closed, a small courteous kiss instead of a slam. The sidewalk beyond was damp and no longer interested in being a witness. We spilled to ground anyway, because bodies want to prove a point after facts have done it. The front crack through the corner of the glass held the street in spiderweb lines. The alley camera hesitated, a hiccup of nothing, and then remembered to be a camera again. The underground gate on the panel still read, "Open without remorse." The gate itself sat where physics put it, open enough to encourage, not enough to admit a vehicle without a scrape. The motor housing felt warm like a pet that denies being on the couch. No motion on the sidewalk except the ghost of a bus washing our windows in diesel light. No wet footprints outside. The rain had worked early, and the night had learned to be dry. We listened to the street breathe and asked it nothing. The supervisor keyed the mic for the sentence that balances dignity and truth. No visual on egress. Back upstairs, I checked the elevator. The car stopped at G with its doors a finger shy of honest, as if a shoulder had been near steel and both parties had negotiated. The knee-height lens wore a fog that had dried into a smudge in the pattern I was learning to resent. I cleaned it because the future hates the past's fingerprints. We reconvened at the maintenance closet. The numbered seal lay perfect, but the tape below it had lifted one more whisper, the marker dot moving like a freckle on a living thing. "Seal's intact," the supervisor said out loud for the future, then wrote "seal intact," exactly as he'd said it. He put a hand an inch from the seam and took it back like you do when something is warmer than a wall should be. Dispatch asked for outcomes. We gave them the short version. No alarm, elevator self-select 4, front door polite open without call, probable riser path, no contact, no face. Another sight stepped on the channel with a last Halloween aftershock, a smoke head triggered by a fog machine in a bar that wanted to be a haunted house. Our operator cleared it with a tired, happy November and came back to us with a tone that meant, "Write it clean." We pulled logs for our comfort and found none for our conviction. The door control swore no open. The recorder swore nothing happened in the minutes that happened. The gate swore open all night like a mantra. We wrote our careful words anyway. Front entry observed cycling, lobby glass returned to seated, no unauthorized persons observed. Paper believes paper. We did one more pass. 5 had the nothing only 5 can own. 4 had the clinic patience that makes you tired. At the pharmacy shutter, the bolt's tiny silver kiss looked smug. In the pediatric corner, the cardboard skeleton's bent knees looked like it had started a run and never got permission to finish. I put a hand to the stair hinge and learned nothing, which is its own relief. The supervisor took the access report and the camera clips into a folder, like the folder could argue for us later. He looked at me, the trainee, and then at my trainer. "You'll come back next weekend," he said, like a statement and a question. "We'll see if the building wants to do the same show twice." Down at ground, the front glass sat polite and professional, the crack at the corner catching light like a star. The underground gate held its almost open like a grin someone forgot to wipe off. A breeze came up the stair throat and cooled my sleeves. I wrote the last line our night could carry without blushing: site secure, anomaly unresolved. And when we killed the lobby lights, the elevator lit 4 one more time on its own, as if remembering where the story wanted to start again. Morning made the night small enough to staple. We printed what could be printed and found the gaps where the story lives. The door controller swore the front glass never cycled. My eyes had watched it breathe. The gate log said closed from midnight through shift end. The head unit in the garage said open like a mantra, and the motor housing kept its pet warm secret. The elevator report showed manual inputs at 2 times neither of us had touched it. 1 door, open, 1 4, as if a thumb had pressed from inside the record instead of on a button. The vendor came with a polite laptop and the phrase cannot reproduce. He ran tests that made beeps instead of cents, then said the sentence that helps no one. Could be firmware. He didn't have a word for how the car held 4, like a thought, or for why the knee-height lens kept fogging where hands aren't supposed to be. The alarm company checked their panel and emailed a clean bill like a doctor who doesn't treat throats. No trouble, no alarm, no history. The pharmacy shutter bolt wore its tiny silver kiss in daylight like jewelry. The report called it cosmetic. The maintenance closet got a numbered seal across its tape corner, ugly, brittle, the kind that tattles, and a photo for the file. We all stood around the picture like it might answer on a delay. I wrote my careful words. Elevator indicators remained at 4 without call. Front entry observed to open-close. Controller did not register event. Garage gate head indicated open. Log indicated closed. No unauthorized persons observed. Paper nodded, satisfied with nouns. Air kept its adjectives. The supervisor ended the rap the way good supervisors do. "We'll come back next weekend, same time. If it's craft, it repeats. If it's happenstance, it doesn't." He didn't say insider. He didn't have to. The word lives in the part of the hallway that refuses to echo. That week, the paper pumpkins came down. A ghost doodled in the corner of the flu-shot banner stayed, because tape likes to win arguments with fabric. Halloween rolled back into an ordinary calendar. The building still wore a little October at the edges, the kind that makes quiet feel rehearsed. And when the follow-up email came with no fault found in confident font, the elevator chose 4 on its own at 1902, like it had read over our shoulder. They put me back on the loop alone to see if conditions repeat. That's the phrase that turns a trainee into a gauge. Saturday rolled over into Sunday. The underground gate looked obedient in the camera and a little too alive in person. The front glass crack still made a star at the corner of the lock. The paper ghost on the banner had lost an eye and didn't seem to mind. Ground floor first, vending machine alive, bathroom light slow to wake, reception cauldron gone, sugar smell stuck to the air like a memory. The elevator indicators were asleep until I walked past. G, 1, 2, 3, then 4. I didn't touch anything. I let it be proud of the number it liked. I held 4 the way we'd practiced, 1 eye on the pharmacy shutter, 1 ear on the stair hinge, shoulders squared to the maintenance door, Nobody opens because we want to keep our jobs. The numbered seal across the tape corner looked smug. The tape under it had lifted a hair anyway, like skin planning a bruise. I put my cheek near, not on, the metal and let temperature talk. Warm at the seam, cooler at the hinge, a hint of air at my ankles with that soft dust taste of riser. Behind the panel, cloth shifted against concrete. Careful, knees first. Not motion, redistribution. The sound a person makes when they exist inside a wall and need to be less than a person. The elevator down the hall sighed like door open with no call. The indicator stayed at 4, as if a thought didn't want to be interrupted. I radioed the short version to dispatch, holding on for riser warm, elevator self-selecting, and got their bedtime voice. Copy. Continue to observe. Call if front entry cycles. 0204, the stairwell farther down breathed twice. Tiny changes in pressure that run along sleeves if you let fabric be your meter. I imagined the route up from the garage through a quiet corner, across 3, into riser space through the maintenance closet we had sealed, a pause to listen, a stillness to pass cameras when the cones are kind. I didn't touch the seal. I wrote the minute next to it in my notebook like superstition. The dot the supervisor had placed the week before looked smaller, which is how dots look when a wall remembers to be warm. Somewhere below, a tread sang the high note of a bad repair, and then learned how not to. People who practice teach buildings to forget themselves. 0217. The lobby glass breathed a polite inch and settled back on its seat, as if someone had negotiated without touching. Running steps, 2, not 4, crossed tile and chose concrete. The garage head still read open on my screen and nothing at all to my hand. I took the stair fast enough to honor the moment and slow enough not to break it. Debt collector pace. The alley camera hiccuped a half-second of static. The picture returned with pure innocence. The sidewalk showed air where feet had been. I stood in the vestibule and listened to the door decide it hadn't moved. No alarm, no face. Just the shape of a choice after it has been spent. Back on 4, the seal lay intact, the way paperwork defines intact. The tape edge under it had lifted the smallest hair more. The breath behind the panel cooled like a person who had finished being close to me. I wrote possible movement in riser, unopened, because words have to pretend to be enough. Would 241. The elevator did the lazy loop of a board machine, G, 1, 2, 3, and settled at 4 without an invitation. The car camera wore a smear at knee height that I had cleaned at 12. I cleaned it again because cameras like making us tidy our fear. I gave the building the last test I had. I stood in the stairwell on 3 and held the hinge with 2 fingers. If the someone liked the seam on 4, they would pass me in the well just out of sight. Heel, half-breath, toe. There it was, the rhythm I knew from other places where practice lives. He paused one landing below, listening to silence he had worked hard to earn. I let him have it. It's the only courtesy I own. 0303, the front glass breathed and closed for no one. The gate read whatever it wanted to read. The building held its breath around me and then remembered to hum. And when the hour turned, I knew the part that mattered. Either a perfect hide or a practiced insider. Reports don't carry that sentence. People do. We turned in our copies and let paper believe paper. The vendor closed the ticket with no reproducible fault. The elevator kept a private friendship with 4 on nights it liked. The numbered seal over the closet tape never broke on our watch, and the tape under it kept trying to remember how to lift a corner. Logs stayed loyal to themselves. The air stayed loyal to me. I went back once more by myself because I wanted to hear the building without anyone's rank making it behave. The clinic slept like clinics do, disinfectant and printer dust, gloves with their faint plastic sweetness, pediatric skeleton taped in the corner with knees bent for a run it will never take. The garage was a mouth that had learned not to smile. The front glass held its crack like a star that won't leave the sky. I stood in the maintenance corridor, one palm a half-inch from metal, and felt the breath behind the riser answer my hand without touching it. Down the hall, the elevator indicator remembered 4 all on its own. Somewhere below, a tread sang and then didn't. The building exhaled through my sleeves like a patient who's finally figured out how to breathe around a tube. I'm supposed to say site secure and let the clock eat the night. That's what the field on the form wants. The truth is smaller and heavier. There's a route through that place that someone knows like a song. Tape corners, bolt kisses, tiny warm seams, doors that learn to breathe without alarms. You don't need Halloween for that, you need practice. If you want the last picture, it's this. Empty hall, motion lights waking one panel ahead like somebody just out of reach. The elevator light holding 4 as if it's proud to remember. A seal that stays ugly and intact while the tape under it dreams. The front glass that can open politely for no one. And me, first week trainee who isn't a trainee anymore, standing with my ear near a hinge, counting the half-breaths of a person who learned the building faster than I learned my job. I go back on days now. Nights belong to people who like that song. When I pass the clinic, I sometimes lift 2 fingers the way you do at a friend's window. The indicator doesn't blink. The riser doesn't answer. But in the back of my teeth I still hear it. Heel, half-breath, toe, then the gentle knock of an elevator that chooses 4 without being asked. Those were 3 allegedly true Halloween night accounts. If they share anything, it's this. Buildings keep better secrets than people, and practice beats superstition. If you work nights, trust air pressure, tape corners, and the lens that fogs at knee height. Be suspicious when footage is perfect. If you hear 3 silent beats and then the sprint, step aside. Thanks for listening. Lock up, get home safe, and when the keypad flashes green for someone else, let it.